Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay. It's Friday. The Universities of Wisconsin are committed to freedom of speech and freedom of expression. It is our expectation that the audience will allow our proceedings to occur without disruption. Any disruptions to the event will be handled swiftly, and responsible individuals subject to disciplinary action and/or other citations for the disruption. UW-Madison students involved will be referred to the Office of Student Conduct and Community Standards. With that, Megan, please call the roll.
Regent Adams.
Present.
Regent Adongo.
Present.
Regent Bogus.
Present.
Regent Cologne.
Here.
Regent Goydam.
Here.
Regent Cruiser.
Present.
Regent Menedetz.
Here.
Regent Nixon.
Here.
Regent Peterson.
Here.
Regent Prince.
Here.
Regent Ryan.
Here.
Thank you. Regent Salzwedel.
Here.
Regent Trainer. Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Underley.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
And Regent Weatherly.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you, Megan. As we consider items on today's agenda, are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's open session agenda? Hearing none, let's proceed. We'll start our meeting today by hearing directly from a UW-Madison student. I would like to invite Lori Reeser, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at UW-Madison, to introduce our next speaker.
Good morning, everybody. So glad you got, well, some of you got the red jacket memo. Thank you. Go Wisconsin. Good morning, Regent President Bogos, Assistant President Rothman, Regents, Chancellors, and colleagues. As you said, I'm Lori Reeser, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and we're so blessed to work with such talented students. And a number of you saw and heard from some of them yesterday at our Education Committee meeting. I am honored to introduce another impressive student leader to you this morning. Shantanu Chaudhuri is a senior from Grafton, Wisconsin, studying computer engineering and computer sciences here. As president of the Wisconsin Union, he leads the Wisconsin Union Directorate and chairs the Union Council, which is the shared governance group. He also serves on my Cabinet of Student Leaders, which is a group of student leaders at UW-Madison that represent the diversity and influence of our student organizations on campus. Shantanu's passion and enthusiasm are contagious, as you will soon hear. Heidi Lang, one of his advisors at the Wisconsin Union, said he's known for his humor, initiative, and meticulous attention to detail. Shantanu is a collaborative and visionary leader and committed to enhancing the student experience by bringing big ideas to life. Here to share his UW-Madison story with you, his pursuit of purpose and community, I'm proud to welcome Shantanu Chaudhuri.
Those were a lot of nice words. Thank you, Dr. Reeser. Good morning, Regent President, members of the Board of Regents, Chancellor Mnookin, Vice Chancellor Reeser, and distinguished guests. My name is Shantanu Chaudhuri, and I'm honored to speak with you today. I'm a senior, pursuing my Bachelor's of Science in Computer Engineering and Computer Science. And I'm also currently serving as the President of the Wisconsin Union, through which I chair the governing body of the Wisconsin Union and support a team of brilliant and dedicated student leaders who are working every day to provide opportunities for connection on our campus. Thank you for this invitation and the opportunity to not only tell you about the story of my journey here at UW-Madison, but also about how this institution has transformed my outlook on identity, community, and purpose. Now, of course, I would not be standing here in front of you today if it weren't for the amazing communities that I've immersed myself in. I've had the pleasure and the privilege to work with some of the best professional staff in the world, given opportunities to have thought-provoking dialogue with many of our amazing campus administrators. And for me, most importantly, I could not have been luckier than to learn from and be surrounded by some of the brightest and the most passionate student leaders, and have those students, administrators, and professional staff be who I call my community. Now, UW-Madison has been my dream school for as long as I can remember. Coming from a high school in Milwaukee suburb called Grafton, I was in awe of this institution's prestige and reputation. And I fully understand now through my classes as to why it has earned that prestige. In my coursework, I feel challenged every single class. Every bit of learning is earned. But what makes UW-Madison truly exceptional is not just the academics. It's the way that this institution teaches us how to navigate the world and how to find meaning in the communities we build. I was born in India and raised in the US. My family moved throughout my childhood as my dad found new job opportunities. And in 2013, we moved to Grafton, Wisconsin from Atlanta, Georgia. We used to be 20 minutes away from the Coca-Cola factory, and now we were 20 yards away from at least 2 cows. It was a big change. Because of all the moving around, I got really good at adapting. At an early age, with each location we moved to, I would try out a new version of myself. Maybe this one would work better. Who knows? And by doing this over and over and over again, you never really get a chance to settle into your real identity. When I first started 5th grade at Grafton Elementary School, it was an opportunity to change. I told myself, don't be a tattletale, try to be the class clown, and learn a few bad words. Although I failed miserably at being the class clown, I noticed improvements with the new version of me who let kids get away with things. I also got more comfortable with the words dumb and stupid. So when middle school started, I again adapted to become a quieter person and kept more to myself. But after high school, specifically after the pandemic lockdown, I learned that I really do value being around people. My last 2 months of high school, when I was finally allowed to attend school in person, I was the most outgoing I could remember myself being. So when I stepped onto the UW-Madison campus, I was determined to make the most of this new chapter at my dream school. But what I didn't realize at the time was that UW-Madison would offer me more than just an education. After a lifetime of moving locations and reinventing myself, this campus would offer me a place to belong and to grow. That sense of belonging, however, didn't come easy. My first semester was anything but smooth. I struggled to find my footing. I was surrounded by thousands of people and students, yet I felt incredibly alone. I went to class, I joined a few clubs and tried to put myself out there, but nothing seemed to click. One evening, after a particularly rough week, I found myself sitting alone in my dorm room, scrolling through social media and feeling more isolated than ever. That's when my best friend texted me. He asked me to join him at this meeting for a club. It was a committee meeting hosted by the Wisconsin Union Directorate. Every part of me wanted to stay in my comfort zone. But something told me to go. That night was a turning point. I walked into the room, nervous and unsure, but was greeted with smiles and warmth. I met people who, just like me, were eager to connect. We laughed, played games, and shared stories, and for the first time since arriving on campus, I didn't feel like another face in the crowd. I felt seen. That one small event led to more opportunities, joining student organizations, attending workshops, and building friendships that have become the foundation of my college experience. Through that initial struggle and the decision to step outside of my comfort zone, I found my community. The Wisconsin Union became my anchor, a place where I could explore my interests, meet people from all walks of life, and most importantly, discover more about myself. The Wisconsin Union, for those of you who don't know, houses the Wisconsin Union Directorate, a student-led organization that engages our UW community and beyond through events and activities centered on connection and inclusion. I have been a part of this organization in several capacities throughout my time at UW. Being part of the Wisconsin Union Directorate has been the highlight of my Badger experience, from planning a showcase of global foods, to bringing an iconic actor, Danny Trejo, to Shannon Hall, to being able to share the impact of these experiences with you here today. And now, as president of the Wisconsin Union, I have the unique privilege of learning from individuals across every corner of this institution. And what I've come to realize is that at our core, we are all working towards the same goal. Students, staff, faculty, administrators, we're all striving for something bigger than ourselves. We are one big community. We celebrate together, we laugh together, and yeah, sometimes we disagree. We get frustrated with one another. But as I prepare to graduate and move on, hopefully without you missing me too much, I want to share with you the most important lesson that I learned at this institution. I learned that we need to work through our differences with respect and a commitment to truly listen to one another. A similarity that ties us all together is the fact that every individual is unique in background and experience, and it takes intentional connection and conversation to understand the perspectives that are derived from these differences. Because real progress happens not when we avoid difficult conversations, but when we engage in them with an open mind and a shared purpose. When we express our ideas with passion, understanding, and respect, we don't just communicate, we create meaningful change. At the end of the day, we are all working towards the same goal. We just bring different perspectives to the table. This is a lesson that I truly internalized here over the past 4 years, and a lesson I promise to embody and share for the rest of my life, regardless of the setting. So why did I just give you a rundown of my entire college journey? Because my story, from a kid constantly adapting to fit in, to now a young adult who has found confidence and belonging, is a testament to the transformative power of community. UW-Madison has taught me that identity isn't something you stumble upon overnight. It's something you build through experiences, relationships, and the courage to be yourself. And it flourishes when you're surrounded by people who believe in you. These individuals have not only supported me, but have also challenged me to grow. They've shown me that community isn't just about finding people who are like you. It's about surrounding yourself with people who inspire you to be the best version of yourself. As I reflect on my time here, I am overwhelmed with gratitude for this institution and the people who make it so special. To me, UW-Madison isn't just a world-class academic institution. It's a place where I learned to be comfortable with my identity. It's where I found my community. And it's my experiences here that have shaped my purpose. And for that, I will always be proud to call myself a Badger. Thank you.
So much, Shantanu. That's truly inspirational. You are an amazing public speaker, and to get up here in front of all of us, everyone has a difficult time. That was perfection. And I know your future is going to be amazing. So I just want to ask the Regents if there are any comments or questions for Shantanu. No? Well, thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank you again, everybody.
Next on the agenda, our hosts have convened a panel to discuss how major research universities like UW-Madison can empower innovation and entrepreneurship. I'll now turn the floor over to our panel moderator, John Eckert, Special Advisor to the Chancellor for Entrepreneurship. John, can you lead us off with introductions? I'll give you a minute here. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Regents. I'd just like to first start off by thanking you for your service as members of the Board of Regents to the state of Wisconsin and UW-Madison and universities of Wisconsin. We know you have many late nights and long meetings, and we really appreciate all the work that you do to help improve our universities. The title for this panel is Empowering Innovation and Entrepreneurial Excellence. I'm John Eckhart, Special Advisor to Chancellor Mnuchin for Entrepreneurship and a professor in Wisconsin School of Business and Wisconsin Institute for Discovery. Joining me on our panel today is Wes Schroll, the co-founder and CEO of Fetch, America's Rewards app, Wes co-founded this multi-billion-dollar company, Fetch, during his sophomore year at the University of Wisconsin-Madison with fellow business student Tyler Kennedy. Next is Kieran Furlong. Kieran is CEO and co-founder of Realata Fusion. Realata is a fusion energy company spun out of UW-Madison that is helping to establish Wisconsin as a leader in the fusion economy. Next is Eric Iverson. Eric is the CEO of the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation. WRF, as you know, is one of the most unique and important institutions in the state of Wisconsin. Eric is leading a transformation of WRF, and part of this work includes changing how WRF supports entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, and working closely with Eric on the work that we will highlight today. Last is Jessica Martin-Eckerle. She's CEO and co-founder of Forward Biolabs, a premier Midwest co-working life science lab here in Madison for early-stage startup companies. Her background includes bringing scientific discoveries from academic labs into the marketplace, by a startup was acquired by established companies, and now with us at Forward Biolabs. Format for this session is that first, I'll provide a brief overview of the new campus strategy for entrepreneurship at UW-Madison. We will then turn to our panelists who will share with you that there is excellence in entrepreneurship to celebrate on our campus every day, excellence that we can build on, the unique perspectives on our entrepreneurial economy. I'll then kick off the conversation by asking the panelists a few questions, and then we'll open to the members of the Board of Regents. Let's now turn to our new strategy for campus entrepreneurship. In your folder, and also in your box folder linked to the agenda, is an executive summary, and I believe the full report, released on October 1 of 2024. That was charged by Chancellor Mnuchin. For members of the public, the executive summary and full report is available at news.wisc.edu. The Chancellor's charge to the working group, concisely stated, was to provide recommendations on how to improve processes and outcomes in entrepreneurship at UW-Madison, with an eye towards integrating UW's entrepreneurial activities deeper into the economy of the state. Members of the working group included Chris Kozina, who was co-chair, a seasoned industry executive and successful business leader, who's continuing on this work as an advisor this year. Stephanie Furlong, who has a career in higher education administration, who has led several successful cross-campus improvement efforts at UW-Madison, and she's also continuing this work with me this year as operations director. Next is Rock Mackey, a faculty entrepreneur whose company have literally saved hundreds of thousands of lives, people fighting cancer. He's an emeritus faculty member at the School of Medicine and Public Health. Ann Smith, who's an emeritus faculty member in the law school, who's well known for being one of the co-founders of the Law and Entrepreneurship Clinic, which has helped many faculty and students start companies. Scott Resnick, who's co-founder and chief operating officer of Hardin Design, an entrepreneur here in Madison, who's also heavily involved in entrepreneurship policy across the United States. Zach Ellis, a venture capitalist, founder and managing partner of South Loop Ventures in Texas, who has experience in academic entrepreneurship, including working many years ago at WRF. And also Valerie King Bailey, an entrepreneur out of Chicago, founder and CEO of Onshore Technology Group, a software company that has been on the Inc. 500 and 5,000 list several times. Concisely stated, and there is a lot in their report, but at the very high level, is that the working group recommended the following. First, if the university wishes to excel in entrepreneurship, it should commit to excellence entrepreneurship with a focus on founders. More on that second part in just a minute. Second, we should establish a campus leadership and structure to bolster entrepreneurship. Some changes in how we organize ourselves. Third is to build on our entrepreneurial culture and create an even broader culture to promote and celebrate entrepreneurship as a core ideal tied to the Wisconsin idea. Lastly, expand access to capital. Our companies regularly struggle to access venture capital and risk capital, and we need to address that head on. Let's talk about this focus on founders. If you look at universities and how they typically manage entrepreneurship from kind of as an institutional level, they're typically focusing on a process called technology transfer. We are very proud of this. It was only invented here at our university with the formation of WRF in 1925. The idea here is that there are companies that are formed based on technology that's invented literally on our campus and are spun out of the university through this process called tech transfer, in our case working with WRF. They end up having jobs in startups and impact like I described with Rock Mackey's work earlier. This is a phenomenally important form of entrepreneurship, and we certainly need to lean into that further. But if you look at campuses today, our campuses and at campuses across the country, you will find many impactful companies that learn and leverage and benefit from the resources of their universities and ours that aren't actually seeded by technology, a patent from the university. Instead, it's knowledge acquired. An example of that might be Epic Systems, a phenomenally impactful company that helps to manage medical records for most patients in America today. There's no University of Wisconsin patent in that company, but there's definitely a story of where that company came from and a university playing a role in that. Another would be Fetch Rewards, where there's no university technology there, but you'll hear from Wes around his story and how University of Wisconsin played in that, in the formation of that company. So our strategy is to shift and focus on founders, the people that create and build companies. We want to recruit them into the state of Wisconsin and from across our state, help them develop as entrepreneurs and develop their ideas into companies while they're here, and lastly, help them launch entrepreneurial careers in companies. This is very supportive and synergistic of the technology transfer process, because one of the things that we need to bring more science out of our university into companies is enterprising individuals that are trained to want to take those risks and bring that technology out. There's a great marriage here between those two approaches. The goals of this work, like concisely stated, and there's obviously other things that might wrap into this that you can read about in the report, is first to increase the number and quality of companies formed by trainees and faculty annually, including those based on UW technology. And second, ensure that all interested faculty and staff and students have access to entrepreneurial training programs that are the best, top tier. So what is happening now? This report was released on October 1. The Chancellor appointed me as the special advisor to get this work moving forward. I, along with Stephanie Furlong, have been working with campus leadership, and Chris Kazina, have worked with campus leadership, business leaders, partners including WARF, to pull the community together around this new approach. We're working on designing a new structure and leadership to enable action, accountability, and collaboration across our UW-Madison ecosystem around entrepreneurship. To succeed, we will need to double down on programs that are working and leverage the wisdom of outside experts. One such example, and there are many, and this could have been a very long panel and a very long conversation about wonderful things that are happening on our campus right now around entrepreneurship. But one out on our panel today is the Creative Destruction Lab, operated as a partnership between Wisconsin School of Business and our Computer Science Department, and supported by American Family Insurance, both in funding, but probably more importantly, expertise. CDL is a startup mentoring program for technology-based startup companies. A few highlights about this program that gets me very excited. First, in the last 7 years, 96 of the companies they have served have generated more than $1.4 billion in equity value. This year, coaching is being provided by 89 mentors, including 53 who are not faculty or alumni of our university. 46 of the mentors are venture capitalists or angel investors from outside the state of Wisconsin. This is a great example of a founder-focused approach. We're helping these companies achieve the next level that is leveraging the expertise of our university to attract talent and companies into our state. Before we turn to the panel, why is this work important now? Really, there's many reasons. I'm just going to highlight just two in the interest of time. First is job creation. UW and the economy of our state are closely linked. We can help our economy innovate and foster job creation through entrepreneurship. Historical data, the best research, shows that new firms are typically the drivers of employment growth in the US economy, and UW can and does play a fundamental role in activating entrepreneurship in the state. Second is technological change. Technological change is fundamentally changing almost every single industry in the economy today. It's creating opportunities for entrepreneurs and also some challenges for existing companies. To give you just a little example, and I'm not exaggerating, today entrepreneurial students engage in global commerce, including managing global production and supply chains from their laptops while they're students at our university. These are the kind of skill sets that are available to people and the technologies that they can leverage that was not available 20 years ago. We need to lean into entrepreneurship so our faculty, students, alumni, and state are those who can learn to leverage those technologies and be those who shape the future economy of the state and the world instead of just being merely shaped by it. Let me first turn to Wes Schroll as our first panelist and one of those people shaping the economy of the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. I'm excited to give you guys a little bit of a background to the founder first mentality that I think John and the school has showed back in my own personal journey to get to where I am today. To give everyone a quick snapshot though, Fetch is based and headquartered here in Madison, Wisconsin. We're over on East Washington. Today we have over 1,000 employees. We serve people with our free mobile app that rewards them for everyday shopping that they do. And we've already given back over $1 billion to the 1 in 10 households that use our product every single month. You'll even see us in the upcoming Super Bowl, so keep an eye out. We're excited to be putting Wisconsin on the map with the first Super Bowl commercial. But I want to take you back to 2010. I was getting ready to go into my senior year of high school in where I grew up outside of Boston. And I was thinking about what school to go to. And obviously there's plenty of good schools on the East Coast, and I looked and applied to a lot of those. But my parents, who both grew up in Illinois and spent their time in the Midwest, my brother was actually born here in Madison while my dad was working at Land's End, recommended that I take a look at University of Wisconsin-Madison. Further, he said that there's this interesting momentum that is building towards entrepreneurship there. I had already done 2 startups in high school. I knew this was something that I wanted to go after. So I sent a blind email to John, because he was leading an entrepreneurship program for MBA students. I figured if I was going to learn from someone about what UW can provide to me as an entrepreneur, I should reach out to him. So I came out here and it was a very typical spring day, beautiful 40-degree weather, everyone flying around on their mopeds and shorts, and I was right away just like amazed by the culture. I want to be here, this is great. And I go to his office at the business school and I walk in and I say, John, thank you so much for taking the time, I appreciate this. He says, do you have a coat? Yeah, I said, put it on. And he took me on a 3-hour tour of campus. We walked around campus. He showed me that there was space for entrepreneurs here. There was going to be offices that I could compete for. There was the Law and Entrepreneurship Clinic. There was a small business incubator that I could participate in. There was the Burrell Business Plan competition. And he laid out all of the different resources that UW was going to bring to bear if I was to come and go to school here. So for me, I went back to the airport and I decided that this is where I wanted to be. I applied, I got in, and I decided to come back here and choose to start my next venture while I was going to school here. And everything that John had talked about was there. When I came here as a freshman, I had an amazing time finding all of these resources. The amount of people who wanted to support and help me on that journey was always something that was incredible to me. So throughout my freshman year, I became a part of the Law and Entrepreneurship Clinic where I was getting legal advice for how to actually form the LLC, how to file our first provisional patents. I was then actually competing in the Burrell Business Plan competition my sophomore year, so I could get the initial capital that I needed to go and hire the first team that I had. The first team I found by putting a bunch of flyers in the CS department and finding other students who wanted to work on a project that was exciting, many of which who have now become multimillionaires off of just helping us early in that journey. And it was something that we're incredibly proud of, that so much of the founding team was based here in Madison, and that's why our office continues to be here. I ended up dropping out after my sophomore year because I didn't have enough time to do both, at least at the level that I thought I needed to. And even in that process, there was such grace given to me from the business school, who, while there was no formal process for what it would be like to drop out, gave me their assurance that they were going to continue to check in and that they would always be here if things didn't work out. That gave me the confidence to go and actually start the business and get to where we are at now 11 years later. So it was an incredible process. So much of what John is speaking about was my experience, and that's why I'm here today. Is I think the more resources and effort that we can put into making that experience not the exception, but something that people can find and expect to find when they come here, I think the state will benefit, I think the university will benefit, and hopefully the companies that are created here will benefit millions of others. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Next is Kieran Furlong.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here speaking before you today. So my name is Kieran Furlong. I'm the CEO of Realta Fusion, and we are a fusion energy company that's spun out of a large Department of Energy sponsored project that's located here at the University of Wisconsin. We're developing what we believe will be the lowest CapEx and the fastest path to commercial, abundant, zero carbon fusion energy. We established the company at the end of 2022. We're based here in Madison, and we've a small but growing team, so we now have 15 employees. 2/3 of those have moved from out of state to come here to Madison to join our company, and they're all very capable, highly educated individuals. The company is backed by a well-known West Coast VC firm, Coastal Ventures, and we are also one of just 8 companies that the US Department of Energy have selected for their flagship public-private programs, and that's the Milestone Program for Fusion Energy. Last year, in just 1 year alone, we invested $2 million in sponsored research at the University of Wisconsin, and we anticipate this year it'll be over $3 million. And so we're still a small company, but we've raised over $10 million in venture capital money at this point. There will be more ahead. Fusion is pretty capital intensive. A bit about myself. I'm a chemical engineer originally. Grew up in Ireland, studied there before coming, traveled in a number of different countries, ultimately came to the US. Spent a decade in the chemical industry, then went to grad school at Stanford and got plugged into the first clean tech boom. Worked in a number of startups, including one here in Madison, Wisconsin, which is what brought me here first. That company also happened to be a University of Wisconsin spin-out company. So did that for a while, left Wisconsin, went back to California into venture capital, then back to my home country to launch a fund over there, but moved back here with my family. We thought this would be a great place to raise our children, and actually took a role at the University of Wisconsin. I could only stand being in a big institution for so long before I went back into the world of startups and VC. But WARF actually kind of beckoned me back and said, hey, there's one project we'd like you to work on. And that's what ultimately became Real to Fusion. It's no exaggeration, it's just a bold statement of fact to say that without University of Wisconsin-Madison and without WARF, Real to Fusion would not exist, the jobs we're creating would not exist, and the millions of dollars that we're bringing to the state and to the university as inward investment would not exist either. So I'm happy to talk further about that depth in fusion energy, if that's where folks want to go, but also about our experience in standing up this company and spinning it out of the University of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. Eric.
Thanks for that nod, too. Appreciate it very much. Thank you very much to the leadership of the University of Wisconsin system and to the Board of Regents for the invitation to come and speak with you today. I look forward to having a conversation with you if whatever questions you may have. I'd like to start, though, by saying, although we represent largely the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we are part of a great system. And entrepreneurship is incredibly important to the entire system. And one of our sister organizations, YSIS, certainly represents many of the universities. And they also support entrepreneurship largely for the undergraduates through Venture Home. And I know Chancellor Schmidt, you've done a wonderful job in supporting that as the first one launched up in Eau Claire. I'd also like to say thank you very, very strongly to Chancellor Mnookin, who has taken it upon herself to demand greater strength and focus on entrepreneurship for the well-being of our students, our faculty, for our community, our state, our country, our world. So thank you, Chancellor Mnookin, very much for setting us on this course. Also, thank you to John. He's pivoted from his career trajectory as a growing professor to take on this more administrative duty. And without John's leadership doing this, I think this would not have the acceleration to do Chancellor Mnookin justice on her demand. So with that said, Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, which I have the honor and privilege to lead, and I've been here for about 9 years, our focus is the technologies that are disclosed to us by the faculty at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Every year we receive about 400 new inventions from across campus. That is an incredible output of intellectual prowess. Certainly leaders across the world in their respective fields, from nuclear energy, quantum computing, agriculture, medical, physics, new drugs, etc. So our attention has to be on the well-being of the intellectual output of the professors and the well-being of that technology so that we can get it into the hands of humankind to make humankind and the environment better. That's our mission. And in that process, if we make some money in the form of royalties, we will give those royalties back over to campus in the form of grants. That's what we do. You want us to be focusing on those technologies. You don't want us to be focusing on the entrepreneurship building across this campus. I fundamentally believe that is the role of this campus, and that is why Chancellor Mnuchin and John is trying to take this forward as strongly as possible. With that said, very recently, our team at WARF did an analysis across the universities of our country, particularly those that are proving to be most successful monetarily in technology transfer, from the Harvards and the Stanfords and the Penns and et cetera. And we did learn that they are having some great success because they are doing more in the world of entrepreneurship. Not just trying to find large companies to take rights to the technologies that we're trying to develop, but really putting it into the hands of the students and oftentimes the professors, most importantly though, the entrepreneurs such as Kieran and Wes, and partnering with venture capital funds. That really is a fundamental key to the success. And what WARF has chosen to do is really keep the number of companies that we spin out to a relatively small number. We focus on quality versus quantity. And the venture investments that we're making in those companies have been matched to the tune of 15 to 1. That is, over my tenure, we've invested about 50 million in spin-out companies. Over $800 million of co-investment has come in. That is remarkable, but it's a remarkable testament to both the great technologies coming off this wonderful campus, but also the entrepreneurs who are taking it on to bring it forward. That, though, we need to up our game, not just with the number, but also just the embrace with the rest of the system, with undergraduates, with graduates, and with the professors. And with that said, one of our beliefs is that it should be rare that faculty become full-time entrepreneurs. They should be engaged in the companies. But we also believe very much technology needs to stay on these great campuses because the research that's being done here is phenomenal, and we can teach the students, graduates and undergraduates, in the work that's being done. But also they owe it to the students within their labs to give them the best education and training possible. So we take a holistic approach. We absolutely need the University of Wisconsin to take this lead on training entrepreneurship and building those kinds of resources that Wes described, so that we can continue to do the job that we've been tasked to do, is to look after the technology development that you've given us the privilege to take on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Next, Jessica.
Well, I tell you, I'm following a unicorn, someone who's creating energy from the sun, and the leader of one of the leading tech transfer institutions in the world. This is a hard crowd to follow here, but I'm going to round out our set of introductions with someone who's born and raised in Wisconsin, and with the perspective of the med tech, ag tech, and clean tech startup world. I'm Jessica Martin-Eckert, and co-founder and CEO of a place called Forward Biolabs. Forward Biolabs is steeped in our entrepreneurial community here in Madison. What we do is provide a co-working lab for very early stage companies. We've got about $3 to $5 million worth of equipment. We operate this life sciences laboratory, and it allows a company, when they've got an idea, technology, to raise much less capital, buy their reagents and bring their scientists into our lab and begin experimenting in just a couple weeks. Now, normally this process would be several months before a company could get started on experiments. And so we not only expedite their ability to get their company started, but we lower the barriers for them to get a company started. And then we envelope these founders with a community. They get to know each other, they get to know our partners, and they sometimes even work with each other. And give business to each other. It's a really special community, and what we have heard today is a founder focus, and that's what we continue to do at Forward Biolabs. In just over 6 years, we have served over 50 companies. Those companies have amassed over $400 million in investments and grants. Some of the investment has come from Wisconsin-based investors, and then additionally, there's been about 14 states and a couple countries that have invested or put investment into these companies. And what happens is those investments allow our companies to hire people, they hire students in Wisconsin, they build their companies in Wisconsin. I had a founder in my office last night who was talking about they've just pulled in their very first round of funding. They've got people who are ready to leave their industry jobs to come work at this little startup. It's a WARF startup. they're off to the races, and it is so rewarding to see each and every founder get their start, get their funding, and kind of achieve their dreams, bring these technologies out into the world where they can help patients and people at large. I am a Wisconsin native. I'm from a very small farming town outside of Green Bay. I got my undergrad at Point, and I've been in med tech and biotech in Madison area ever since in industry. This is an important topic for our state. I am personally invested not only in my career, but on a personal level. I want to see this happen for Wisconsin. This report takes the seeds of what has been happening with the programs that Wes has talked about and what Eric is doing at WARF and what we've started at Forward Biolabs, and it puts gasoline on the fire. We can do this, and there is so much more that we can do. I'm really excited for the future of entrepreneurship in Wisconsin.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. I just want to say that I've watched Jessica stand up literally from nothing, this amazing platform that is tackling one of the thorniest problems that we talk about in entrepreneurship, crossing what we call the valley of death. You have science in labs, and you have to generate more information, call it information, but really more science around that idea to then attract investment capital from the outside to then turn it into a company. We have long struggled with this, and she's built a platform that basically drops the costs of this additional layer of science that we need to do, work with great partners like WARF and others across the state to make this happen. And you heard some of the early numbers that she's talking about as far as some of the outcomes. So I think we did hear across all the panelists for like really three themes when they were talking about things like metrics and things that they were highlighting, which is what we're after. One of them was people. They talked about the faculty and the founders that are doing this work. Second, there was hitting on frequently people talking about technology. And then the third, capital. These things coming together. You heard them talk with pride about the people that they're resourcing and enabling, around the technologies that they're building on, and also the dollars that they've raised to sort of support this work. And that's really what this report is about. And let's just start with just one question around the people side of the equation. Like as we shift to this mode of recruiting entrepreneurs like to our campus, so we have a greater concentration, what types of talent should we be focusing on and attracting? Let me maybe start with Jessica.
Oh, it's such a multifaceted question, because I think we have entrepreneurs in the state of Wisconsin. I did not set out to be an entrepreneur myself, and it makes me wonder how many more students do we have born in Wisconsin that if we expose them more to business concepts, to the vernacular around term sheets and raising capital, how many more would take the step into entrepreneurship? That's one of the things highlighted in the report, exposing more students to programming around entrepreneurship. And then we have the Wesses and the Kierans, attracting young people to our university who with a specific interest in entrepreneurship. When we can tie those to the PhDs and postdocs developing these technologies, that's a piece of gold right there to people who are wanting to start companies, pairing them with the technologies. It's a powerful, powerful combination.
Thank you. Eric, you want to add to that?
I don't really know the answer to that question. I got to say, though, that entrepreneurship training to every student and faculty will make them better professionals. That is, very few people actually can become entrepreneurs because it's a phenotype of human being that just takes on risk that few people ultimately do. And that's totally okay. But as long as people have exposure to entrepreneurship, everything from accounting to management to the technology areas, that will make them better employees. And so I believe strongly that entrepreneurship training and resources should be made available to everybody and make it an inclusive and collective process. And I'll come back to the earlier comment of, I think a lot of the professors really belong in the lab doing the work that they are a leader in the world, and it's our job, whether as a resource of WARF or the entrepreneurs of Wes and Kieran and Jessica, then to take that technology forward and have that privilege to do that. So I think it's a matter of allowing self-identification to some extent, much like what Wes described, and then nurture her or his desire to become entrepreneurs and just provide whatever support we can across this entire system.
Yeah, thank you. The self-identification is a really large part of this, and we watch this transformation happen on our campus every day as people find their calling, their occupation, the major that inspires them. One of my favorite accounts is Alec Kubicek, the founder of Understory. This is an incredibly courageous company. He's literally trying to change how we measure weather across the country. And when he started his company now, that he is funding from venture capitalists, investors across the country, including Steve Case, founder of American Online. But one day he came to me and he said, look, John, I just wanted to share with you that I did this program in the business school. It's called the WAVE program in the Wired Center for Entrepreneurship. And this is a class designed to help people create companies. And he said, I took this class, didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't even really know what the word entrepreneur what it really was or meant. Like I'd never really kind of grappled with this word before. And he went through this experience and realized this is something he could do. And this is a way to kind of activate and bring his technology to the marketplace. And he transformed and found himself as an entrepreneur in that class. Let's switch to one other big theme in their report, access to capital. And this is really a challenge for many of the entrepreneurs in the state. This is certainly a two-sided issue, right? We need to deliver more quality companies that then attract the capital. But at the same time, we are sort of struggling on the capital side as well. I want to just turn to Wes and Kieran, who've both been quite successful in raising capital from the outside, and just kind of ask them, like, what are some of the things that they learned from that process that we can bring to this work?
I'll go ahead and answer the question I want to answer. So on the first, I think there's two things we can do to better attract entrepreneurs to UW. The first one is going to be the demand side. How do we generate enough demand from students like myself coming from Boston to know what UW stands for and that UW is supportive of entrepreneurship? That starts with doing things like celebrating the entrepreneurship that is already occurring. You have lots of examples of it. As John mentioned, this table could be much longer and it's there. The more that we are celebrating that as we do our sports, the more the people hear about it will be attracted to this university. For me, it was just luck that my dad had encouraged me to look at UW. It shouldn't be luck. It should be something that is very purposeful, that people across the country know that UW does stand behind entrepreneurs, supports entrepreneurs, and there's been a lot of successful ones that have come out of it. That will get more applying, which I think is important. We need the supply. The second thing that we can do, and John has even taken my transcripts from high school, there's ways of being able to identify someone who is showing early interest in entrepreneurship through even their high school experiences. It won't come through as obvious on their transcripts, but you'll see it through the other activities that they're taking up. You'll see it through mine, fluctuation of grades. When I was working on other projects, my grades would always dip because I was working on trying to do other startups, and I could tie that story together to show him, here's where the two ideas that I was working on my sophomore year of high school and my senior year of high school. Yes, my parents were frustrated. There were dips in the grade during that time period, but those type of correlations, there are things that we can use to look at the data as we get more sample set coming through. That will make it so that as the supply increases, we'll actually be able to find those right ones and make sure that they're the ones getting in and getting the support as quickly as possible. So, sorry, that was the first question. The second piece, so we've raised about $500 million to date. We were able to raise the majority of our initial funding from angel investors, the first couple of $1 million that we had from angel investors in the Wisconsin community. But once we had graduated from $2-3 million, we had to go out and start raising hundreds. We had to go to the coast. And again, back to the first point, I think the more that we can raise up and highlight that there are successful companies that are being built in Wisconsin, to the point out we're profitable, we're still growing very quickly. And the more that the investors on the coast see that these are, I remember our early investors called us one of the diamonds in the rough is what they were looking for. They had a thesis that there were good companies in the Midwest that if they could find would help them outperform their peers who are otherwise just finding the coastal startups that were there. So I think the more that we're able to highlight those, the more outside dollars will start flowing in big ways that we can then go and repurpose towards our headquarters here and hundreds of people here in Wisconsin. So I think it's a momentum thing in both cases, and it's momentum and being comfortable to talk about it and be highlighting the successes that we're already generating.
Awesome, thank you. Kieran, on maybe the capital question or anything else?
Yeah, no, I think I'll follow Wes, and I'm going to blend the two because I think the people and experience goes alongside with the capital as well. Since I came back to Wisconsin in 2019, I've heard lots of, kind of gnashing of teeth around, oh, there's not enough VC capital here in the state. That's not the problem. Now, I commend the efforts that are out there, people like, working on the Badger Fund of Fund and the Wisconsin-based funds. We've attracted investment from Titletown Tech, another VC fund based here in the state, but that's not the problem. The problem is access. Now, as entrepreneurs, we set out to change the world, but with many things, you have to recognize the world is the way it is, and you got to figure out how to work with that. The unfortunate reality is venture capital is still pretty much a cottage industry. It's a very closed industry. The way you get in there is with connections, experience, I always say, if I cold email a venture capital investor, it's about the same success rate as a credit card mailing shot. If I get a warm introduction from someone they respect, I'll almost always get a call. That's just the reality of how it works. So I think when it comes to talent, I'm not trying to highlight my own kind of capabilities. It's more just my own experience as an example. The fact that I had worked in startups on the West Coast, the fact that then I had worked in VC and had built up a network there was instrumental in attracting funding early on for Real to Fusion. I will also say that investment finds good ideas, good teams addressing a market need. So the money is out there. It might be a little bit harder to find. In fact, if there's one thing we could change here in Wisconsin is let's get a direct flight back from Madison to San Francisco. That would be really helpful to the entrepreneurs who have to go there 10 times a year, as well as getting investors to come and visit. But tapping into those people who then have access to that network. So one of the things I always look for, like the University of Wisconsin alumni base could be a huge resource if it was properly managed and used. One of the ways I want to kind of, targeting new recruits is I'll go on LinkedIn or whatever, go to filter by who went to the University of Wisconsin and use the Badger outreach as a way to attract people. There's plenty of people who got their education here, went and worked in fast growth startups in the Bay Area or elsewhere, but now maybe they're looking to buy a house and realizing San Francisco is not a great place to try and do that. Or they've had their first kid and they want to move back to family. That's actually what brought us here the first time is we'd had our first child. We're living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Palo Alto. We moved to a 15-acre farm in Stoughton. So it was a good transition. But where are people in their life? How can we bring them back? That provides the access to the capital. Again, the capital will fund good ideas, good management teams addressing a good market. We need to get the management teams in, and we need to get the management teams, the entrepreneurs, who also have that connectivity. That's a recognition of the way the world currently works with venture capital and high-growth startups. But I think there's ample talent out there that we can bring to the state that will help with the funding question as well.
Yeah, thank you, Kieran. In the end, what Wes jumped into and what Kieran is talking about is the importance of people. And we're an institution, that's what we do. We help people learn new topics, make new scientific discoveries, develop themselves while they're here. And this is really what we want to lean into. Regent Bogus, if I'd like to turn over to you, see if you might have questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have some time for questions, so I'm going to open it up to the regents to see if there are questions for the panel. Yes, Regent Nixon.
This is an esoteric question for Ms. Martin Eckerly. I'm from outstate, and one of the things we frequently hear is that Madison doesn't do anything for outstate people. Specifically where, in what small community did you grow up?
I grew up in the home of the hamburger, which is Seymour, Wisconsin, outside of Green Bay and Appleton.
So the University of Wisconsin-Madison had a direct impact on Seymour, Wisconsin in you.
It absolutely did.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, Regent Tyler, sorry.
Yeah, so I guess I have a question on capital. How do we get the organizations, and I'm thinking the small ones that are scattered across the state, I'm thinking of little ones like Seavane up in the Chippewa Valley and the Idea Fund in La Crosse. it doesn't seem like there's the ability to network opportunities amongst those different organizations that, so CVA may be, only able to bring $5 million total to a project, an idea fund, maybe, probably a little more than that. But I guess the question is there a way to network the resources that we have in the state? I guess I'm not aware of any. If you're ready to scale and you need 100 million, I guess I'm not sure what's in Wisconsin that can do that. But how do we get people to that point where they can get the first couple of million, or is there an effort to network those existing organizations?
I'll take the first shot at that. Jessica's jumping at the bit here too. Yeah, a couple is some of the state-sponsored fund-to-funds where they're populating small seed funds around the state. That's a heck of a good start. But also, I'll repeat, WISIS has the venture home model, which they modeled after Pennsylvania, where they have venture incubators around the state, all of which are tied together, including with all 13 of the universities and access to databases of technology and resource. And WARF houses WISIS within our offices, so we're constantly in touch with them. And of course, Milwaukee has their technology transfer office. So the three of us are united in how we operate. But it is the venture home model that Arjun, the CEO of WISIS, is trying to build across the state. Again, the first one was with help from Chancellor Schmidt up in Eau Claire. But that is meant to be that connective tissue across the entire state associated with each of the 11 schools to build exactly as you suggest should exist. It's got a ways to go, but it's a heck of a good start.
Regent,
I was going to comment on that as well. I'm advisor for the Venture Home and WISIS, and I think they are, it's a good starting place, and it is serving its purpose to help create more awareness around entrepreneurship around the state. And then as far as the funds, Idea Fund of La Crosse, Winnow Fund, and the others that sit around the state, I actually think there's pretty good connectivity. That's one of the things that we do with our entrepreneurs when they're ready to raise capital. And I know WARF does this as well, and other entrepreneurial support mechanisms. We do connect entrepreneurs to those fund-to-funds around the state in addition to the angel networks. It not only gives entrepreneurs access to the capital around the state, but it connects those funds sitting in different parts of the state to technologies and teams in different areas as well.
I'm just going to add one from the entrepreneurship view, so I'm biased on this one for sure. I think even if there were 11 different pockets that each one could put in $5 million, the problem is if you're making the entrepreneur have to go and pitch each one of those, I'm going to San Francisco. I can pitch one group that's able to do it. So if there is some way of putting the entrepreneur first, of if one group identifies that there's a really good company and organization, they then do the coordination to bring the others, and it's one presentation to do it, that would keep me here. Otherwise, it's just, I don't have the time to go and try to piece all of these together. So even if they're collaborating and sharing, hey, here's a good company, if you're making the entrepreneur do the work, there's just easier sources then. So I think that's where it somewhat breaks down, as everyone focuses on first just sharing the what are the interesting technologies or companies, but the work is again falling on the wrong side of the equation when there's so many other choices for us on the coast.
Yeah, it's not just the time either, it's the fact of having a messy cap table and being able to, when we go for our next round, if that was all brought under one entity, like they all chip in, that would make life a whole lot easier as well.
Yes, the speed is obviously tremendously important in like reducing the friction to raise capital. Having said that, there's a fair amount of coordination happening right now, as Jessica just mentioned, and it's sort of more broadly impacting across the states. Just like one very quick example, there's a company called Curate that was started by Tara Linda Willis and her husband Dale. She goes by TL, and they took in funding from the Idea Fund in La Crosse. That company had a successful exit. She's now on as a CEO of another company, now a spin out from UW-Madison with a professor. But what happened is that a venture capital fund in La Crosse is kind of nestled around the university there. Because of that, and part of that positive outcome, that return that they got from her company, when Jonathan went out to raise his next fund, he was able to raise his next fund partly on that performance. And so you're getting like more economic activity happening there, based on what's kind of happening here around that company. So there is sort of more of a connected system underneath that we might really see.
Thank you. Regent Peterson and then Regent Salzwedel.
Thank you, Regent President Bogost. What amazing presentation. Thank you so much. It's so inspiring. And I have kind of a context question. Somebody mentioned, I was going to ask about this before one of you mentioned it, I don't remember which one, about that there are entrepreneurs, we all can't be entrepreneurs. And it's a lot about risk tolerance. And I've never had an entrepreneurial class, but I also know several people who have degrees in entrepreneurship, and they are the biggest chicken livers I've ever seen. and so I guess my question is, how do you nurture that risk tolerance, or is it something you just are born with, or is, you know what I mean? My son is runs our dairy. We have 1,000 cows up in the middle of nowhere, and he is just basically ready, fire, aim, which sounds to me like an entrepreneur. And so I just wonder if you could give me a little concept of how you nurture that, or if it's just hopeless, you either have it or you don't. Thank you.
I'll take a shot at that. I mean, these guys can speak for themselves, but let me speak for them. We are exposed to wannabe entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs all the time. If there's a safety net behind somebody and trying to build a company, that's not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs lunge into the darkness with no safety net, and they just have to figure out how to get through that darkness. And this, we see this on campus with professors. If they maintain their position back at the university, then they have a fallback. And so, or I built a company. I happened to build it in South Africa, but I was doing it as part of a vaccine institute I was running. I was not an entrepreneur. I helped build something, but I had to put it in the hands of people who were truly entrepreneurs so that they could take that risk and put their heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears into that because they had no other option. And so when we think of entrepreneurs at WARF, we're really looking for the people who have done it before, because that experience goes a long way. And we're looking for the people who truly are untethering themselves from something because, by God, they've got to make this work because they don't have the fallback. So that's when we think of that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but to me, that is a telltale sign.
I think it comes back to, at least from my experience, it comes back to having multiple examples around me that I've seen happen that I can then aspire to do. It's where the vast majority of the time that I spend giving back to communities right now is going and speaking with students. Because I'm still young enough that they can see me and I can tell them my story about when I was in high school, when I was in college, and they can actually relate to it. The more I see that, the more they follow up with me a year or 2 years later. Hey, I started this company, I started this one. It comes back to, I think the more if it's something we want to focus on, it has to get the airwaves. Because those airwaves is what will pull out people to be more confident to go and actually try for it. I think having some level of a safety net for a young individual is very important. I had to kind of create mine at UW by talking with the professor, and everyone was super supportive of it. But I had to kind of find that pathway on my own. But again, I think the more people, and Scott Resnick, a bunch of the people you listed, I networked to just as a freshman. Because the more I started to see other successful entrepreneurs around the community, the more I was like, I can do this too then. So I think that part helps to bring it out of someone.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add one last thing on that. So I grew up, my parents are both teachers, my brother's a teacher, grew up in a household where the word businessman was a pejorative. My village in Ireland was probably smaller than Seymour in Wisconsin.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Would be thinking, but I literally grew up at the back end of nowhere. It was not part of the world I grew up in, but I have this insatiable curiosity and a burning desire to make the world a better place. You put those two things together, you have an entrepreneur. And I think that's what gets lost a lot here in the university is people think entrepreneurs, they're rapacious, they're out to make money. That's why people are doing it. That's not the situation at all. I can tell you without a doubt There are way easier ways to make money than starting a fusion energy company with 4 professors. So I think just recognizing that the density that Wes mentioned is really critical, right? It actually provides a bit of a safety net, or, you don't have to completely burn the boats in the Bay Area. You go work for a startup, that one doesn't work, there's another one coming along. Or you start a company, that doesn't work, there's something else you can do as well. So density is going to be really important. Creating that environment for people to take those risks is important. I'm going to do one last political statement on this one as well. When it comes to starting companies, immigrants in the US do it at twice the level of people who were born here. That's not rocket science, right? Because immigrants are already risk takers. They've left their home, they've left wherever they're going from. So you go out there, you start a company. So I think if we can look at all of the students who come here from overseas, is there a way that we can nurture some of their entrepreneurial activities as well? But on the whole, it's like, it's not about the money, it's about making the world better, changing the world in a positive way.
So there's an entrepreneur named Brian Morello who teaches at Beloit College, and he and I work on this question. We go back and forth on this a fair amount. And like kind of our shared experience is that a lot of these entrepreneurs, like the real ones, they disappear a lot. They're skipping class, and then they get stuck, and then they come back, and then they want help with something, and we help them, and they're kind of off on their own again. And this is kind of like the true grit, like entrepreneur, maybe less interested in like the certification, but more they're kind of out there doing it, but there's things that they want to learn. And from my perspective, this is very similar to how we train PhD students. So once a PhD student has passed their qualifying exams, they're out there, they're banging rocks together, they're trying to figure stuff out, and then they get stuck, and then they come back, and we help them, overcome these next obstacles, and then they're off on this quest of scientific discovery again. So this is something that we do quite well, and we have models where we have entrepreneurial students to take independent studies that kind of give them some more flexibility around their projects while they're also learning and taking academic content. But this is a great question because these often are people that are more independent and different than other students.
Regents Oswego?
Could you, this is great, I really appreciate it, and it's wonderful hearing from all of you, but could you explain a little bit more about how the Creative Destruction Lab fits in with this? And I know about that work a little bit from my past career, and just how you're using that. If you're still using it, how you're using it. Do you still, have connections with the University of Toronto, or are you kind of on your own now, or just kind of where you are with all of that?
Yeah, so CDL, as Jack mentioned, is it's a program that was initially created at the University of Toronto, and we're sort of like a franchise operation. We're still very much connected with that, and there are CDL sites basically across Canada and the United States, and they're typically focused on particular topics. And to me, like what CDL is a great example of is that you have an enterprising group of people that got together with industry and created a platform around people that is bringing talent together on our campus around entrepreneurship. And a key part of it is that it's distributed. And so as we're trying to organize ourselves around entrepreneurship on our campus, we're trying to fully embrace the fact that really the way our campus is organized is that the frontier of science in most topics is occurring like in the schools and colleges with the professors, with enterprising deans, and they're coming up with programs like this, and then they're launching them. And so CDL is an example of that, with business and engineering, as business and computer science coming together to build this program. And as we sort of try and organize ourselves better, we want to sort of embrace the fact that we have all these other programs that are distributed. If you flip it around though, and you say, if you look across our campus and say, I'm an entrepreneur and I want to get going, what does the highway look like? You'll see all these great programs like CDL and the MED program, the Mortgage Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, but you also see gaps in the highway, things that they have to try and overcome. And so we're going to launch, the idea is this kind of like the initiative that we're working on right now, we'll be launching different programs to try and fill in the gaps of the highway, tackle the capital issue, be recruiting entrepreneurs in, while also trying to encourage parts of campus that have special capabilities to jump into these different programs, like launching other things like CDL or maybe even expanding that, to kind of strike this balance between like a centralized model and distributed. I hope, is that answering your question or?
I don't know, boots, like when you look like boots on the ground, what CDL does, I'm a mentor in the program, and we've had a couple companies they call them streams in CDL, and there's one, like I mentor for the CDL program in Madison, but they did the program out of Vancouver. And what that did was give them access to industries and to leaders in a whole different ecosystem and investors in a whole different ecosystem. So Kieran and Wes talk about it's still a cottage industry. Your team is working on that on the venture side. That's one of the challenges, to get in front of investors in a large number, and CDL does that for the people who take part in that. In part, they get good advice, and then they also get access to a different network if they're doing it in a different area.
Okay, so they're more maybe from a funding standpoint, they're an assist in terms of.
Yeah, both funding and then advice. It's a mentorship.
Okay.
Mentorship program.
Sorry, I thought your question was more about how does it fit into like the broader strategy? Yeah, I think like in the end, like what we're trying to do is kickstart volume of activity where people are coming to the campus, maybe they're coming to CDL, they're an investor to be part of that program, but then they're here. And a faculty member can also talk to that investor, or Kieran can talk to them and try and raise capital from them or learn from them as well. So it's getting like more volume of higher quality experts into our system on all sides of the equation: founders, investors, entrepreneurs, scientific experts, greater concentration, more activity.
Thank you, Regent Goydam.
Thank you, Regent Professor Bogus. Excellent presentation. Really exciting to hear all the great work happening at Madison, and also fairly confident that there are entrepreneurs at all of our universities, which is why investing in these institutions is so critical. So thank you for that. Quick question on how the RISE initiative is going to maybe coordinate with, or the synergies between that and the new entrepreneurship strategies. So maybe to you, John.
Sure. So like the RISE initiative is really about like strengthening and expanding intellectual capabilities of the university. And we're going to be bringing in talent and faculty that are going to be pushing the frontiers of knowledge, using AI across all the fields that they're being hired into. They're going to come up with new things, new inventions, new applications. And the work that we're doing will make it much easier for those applications and those discoveries to make it into the marketplace.
I'll make a comment. I'm going to make another plug for my Chancellor Mnuchin. So many, over the course of my tenure at WARF, my board will regularly say, as we're thinking about our annual grants and special grants, the first question is, what's the research strategy of the campus? We want to fund the research strategy of the campus. There has been so many issues that University of Wisconsin-Madison has been tackling for so many years. Pulling together a grand research strategy has been a struggle, I suggest, for quite a while. Campus is phenomenal, but Chancellor Mnuchin stepped in and really took the reins and demanded a coordinated research strategy for this grand enterprise we call the University of Wisconsin-Madison, $1.5 billion a year in research. Hired additional leadership to bring a fresh look at campus, and has launched into these series of RISE initiatives, coordinating the strengths of campus, but also suggesting that there are areas that we could build anew almost and become one of the greats in the world. That's how we see it at WARF. And then you add on top of that something that's near and dear to our heart, and her demand to build entrepreneurship, to underpin much of that and allow students and faculty and our community and our alum to participate in taking the research and inventions off of that research strategy, pulling it forward to make the world a better place. Thank you, Chancellor. Really, it is something that has created a North Star for us as a funding agency, and has given us a platform on which we can begin prioritizing certain research activities, entrepreneurship activities. So it definitely will play a significant part in coordinating and strategizing so that we can build tactics to support.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from Regents? Oh, Regent Weatherly.
Thank you. I unfortunately have several questions, so if you could keep your answers, please keep your answers brief, so the other regents don't vote me out. Number one, can you talk about the different types of students that we're trying to encourage entrepreneurship? There's the example of Wes, right? That came here knowing he wanted to be an entrepreneurship and how do we identify them and how do we nurture them along the way and help them? There's also the students that come here not knowing what they want to be when they grow up, but they're identified to entrepreneurship and they get the bug there maybe 5 years later than Wes, but they still get it. But then there's also the students that go into industry, but then 5 years later, develop a deep skill set in something and say, I want to start a company based off of that deep skill set. I think there's dozens of examples of students that went to work for Epic that have then spun out companies. So what are your thoughts on that and sort of best practices within how do we recruit the entrepreneurs? How do we sort of develop them while they're here? And then also, how do we just keep their head on a swivel so when they go into industry, they're actually looking to start businesses? And again, short.
Yeah, so this could be a long answer. I think that the short version of this is that if you look at the data, entrepreneurs are at almost every school and college and major on our campus. So it's certainly well beyond STEM, beyond engineering, computer science, and business for sure. And so our strategies have a portfolio of programs to kind of make available all kinds of different experiences, including courses for students across our campus that might want to explore their interest in entrepreneurship. And then also we're working on an explicit recruitment strategy to try and recruit people who are interested in entrepreneurship, and they know they are at that time, to our campus. But really the twofold is the recruitment and then creating a portfolio of experiences so people can learn and discover their interest in entrepreneurship and also whether they're really good about it, if they're good at it or not. The other piece about kind of like creating, like preparing the latent entrepreneur for that moment when they might want to jump into it. And I think that really comes to sort of the broader education that we provide. Maybe someone takes an entrepreneurship course or a major, they're not really the risk taker at that time, but later on in their life, they get sucked into entrepreneurship. Then we have courses for them that they took while they were here that maybe will be activated. We also have sort of like online courses and working on some badges where somebody might be working in a company right now, really maybe see an opportunity, feel like they need a little bit more training before they want to make the leap, and then they can do courses like that as well.
I think, can I add one comment? I think part of entrepreneurship for people, and this echoes what's being said already with people self-selecting, is when you think of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, there's a research powerhouse and they educate students. And no matter where you are in those ecosystems, what this new effort, I think, one of the really exciting things, I think, is that it will help people see the pathway. I talk a lot about pathways, helping people see themselves on an entrepreneurial path. And we've got programs, but a more streamlined approach where people have a set of team that they can go to, and more programs where they can see themselves on that path to entrepreneurship, I think will help. And that's what you hear John talking about and what you hear all of us talking about with these various programs that hit undergrads, postdocs, PhDs, kind of hits all across the board, because entrepreneurs do come from all areas of campus and all levels in that education continuum as well.
And then my next question, somewhat unrelated. Can you talk about the ecosystem in Wisconsin? This is the sort of takes a village question, which is, yes, we have all the resources at UW-Madison, but then there's the constellation of angel funds, there's WEDC, there is large corporate partners like AmFam that want to be supportive, Northwestern Mutual Life. Can you talk about what the strategy is statewide, and to the extent that you guys can move that forward and convene as the UW-Madison brand?
Well, is this a short answer one or a long answer? I guess let me sort of talk a little bit about like the philosophy of the role here in the report around like maybe our core capability, and then talk about how we're interacting with others. So the philosophy here is really that we want to lean into one of our core capabilities of a university, which is we attract people from all over the world, incredible talent, including from all across Wisconsin, to come here to kind of build the next stage of their life as their career. And we see that as like a main thing we can contribute to this ecosystem, is we can really, with intention, attract people who have an interest in being an innovator, joining a startup company, being a leader of a startup company, that kind of thing. As we kind of see that's something that we can add to the system that a venture fund in La Crosse really can't, but really would benefit from, and also the state would if we were kind of leaning into that and doing it. So the first part is like really playing a major role in kind of the demand for entrepreneurship on the kind of that side of the equation. And then the second is that to be successful, we need to leverage all the expertise outside the institution that we possibly can. So in the report, you'll see us explicitly talking about it and saying one of the great opportunities we haven't leaned into yet to date is to really leverage the experts in the business community in a fundamental way, bring them inside the campus, and have them help us create and support this flow of entrepreneurship and activity. It's happening now. Like, the folks that are running Titletown Tech, like Kieran had mentioned, they invested in his company. They're also here on our campus quite frequently, and we are up there going back and forth, building relationships with them. For sure, we could have more of this activity going on, and this is our aspiration. But across the state, you can kind of get the idea that I'm describing here underlying all this, is that we have something that we can really add to the equation that these other parties really can't, but they have things that they can add to the equation that we can't. That's not our area of expertise, and we're trying to pull that together.
And I think there are efforts working across the state. Like, we are Forward Biolabs is a consortium member in the new Wisconsin Biohealth Tech Hub. And we've been working very, very closely with stakeholders in Milwaukee. And actually, I have personally for a couple of years now, we've talked about this on how do we help med tech, biotech entrepreneurs in Milwaukee. And so Jessica Silvaggi is someone from the UW-Milwaukee we've been working really closely with. And so this is more on an industry vertical to help aggregate the startups that we have, so that if you're an investor from San Francisco or Boston, you can look at Wisconsin and say, oh, there's not just 3 or 4 biohealth startups, there's 25. And so then they can start to see that volume and start to feel like it's more worth their time to come take a meeting here and meet with a bunch of startups.
I just want to say thank you to Wes, actually. And I say that because the premise of the report, John, is being founder focused. Mm-hmm. And, when you're behind a bunch of money and a bunch of technologies and you're trying to build networks, what that means is a little bit nebulous, I have to say. You cemented that for me in a better way to describe when we were talking about venture home around the state and how you really focus on making it easier on the entrepreneur and not making it better on the connective tissue for purposes of Wisconsin as a network. So thanks for that. I really do appreciate it. So this panel has been really helpful to me too as well. So thank you again for having us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Did anybody else have any comments? Okay. Well, I want to encourage all the regions to really, if you have not already, there's a link in the materials to the report, and I'm looking forward to going back and taking a look at it after this amazing presentation. I really want to thank all of you. I want to thank Jessica Martin Eckerly, Eric Iverson, Kieran Furlong, and Wes Stroll, and thank you to John Eckert for all your really valuable information in the report. We're looking forward to delving into it. So thank you so much for all your time. Appreciate it. Now it's time for the presentation of our next Regents Business Partnership Award to UW-Madison and American Family Insurance. I would like to invite those of you involved in the presentation to join me at the podium. Everyone's being shy. As I noted yesterday, this is a decades-long partnership that spans a broad range of collaboration between our flagship and this well-known Madison-based national business. We created the Regent Business Partnership Award a couple of years ago after hearing multiple business leaders describe how important the local university is to their companies. After listening to these businesses, it dawned on us, President Emeritus Regent Walsh, that maybe it was time to recognize the investment companies around Wisconsin are making in our universities and to publicly acknowledge about what we're hearing all the time, how critical our students and and graduates are to the success of some of Wisconsin's most significant businesses. So it's a pleasure to be here today to celebrate the partnership between American Family Insurance and UW-Madison is based on innovation and collaboration. Chancellor Mnuchin, I think you would like to say a few words.
Thank you so much, President Bogus. I'm just so happy to have this opportunity to say a few words about the really exceptional partnership between UW-Madison and American Family. It's been one of my priorities as Chancellor to grow our partnerships with industry. These collaborations fuel so much. They fuel innovations that drive economic growth and change lives in Wisconsin all around the country. They keep us focused on those needs in really direct and explicit ways. They strengthen our workforce engagements, and they bring new ideas to us as well. Many of our partners in industry focus on supporting our research. Some help us build our community outreach. Some support athletic programs and student scholarships. And then we have a few partners who do all of the above and more. And AmFam is one of those. They've invested more than $50 million in the university over the past 10 years in programs that reach across the entire campus. And I believe there's more than 500 UW-Madison alums who work at AmFam, which is amazing. And so we share this passion for our mission, for making better lives, for what UW-Madison can do and what great companies can do as well. And that makes our work together especially meaningful. One of our recent projects together involved putting about a dozen goats, yes, goats, on the AmFam corporate campus to test their effectiveness at controlling invasive species. And you know what? I'm going to tell you it didn't really work very well. We're a learning organization. We try experiments. Some of them are fabulously successful. Sometimes they don't work as well as we might like. And they didn't turn out to be the most efficient or effective weapon in the arena of controlling invasive species. But as the lead researcher pointed out, they were definitely the cutest of the various things that were being tried. Many of you also know that AmFam makes the UW Data Science Institute possible. They continue to power an enormous number of projects there. One of the newest is developing a better way to predict wildfires, particularly salient in this moment. And that's just the tiniest sample of our work together. They've helped to support more than 40 research projects at the Data Science Institute alone. And their support for projects that have been strengthening communities and changing lives have also been pretty incredible. From the Odyssey Project to the University Alliance, to our Wisconsin Idea Fellowships, and much more. And so from my perspective, it's hard to imagine a more perfect selection from UW-Madison's point of view for the Regents Business Partnership Award. So I want to thank the Regents for honoring American Family in this way. And I also want to give a shout out to Regent Salzwedel, who's been a close advisor and friend to the university and to me, and a generous supporter of the university, and spent an incredibly distinguished career at AmFam. Huge thanks as well to Bill Westrate and the members of the AmFam Steering Committee, and to Steve Amundsen, who juggles a whole lot of balls relating to this partnership and manages to keep them all in the air. And so thanks to Steve for his great work with Melissa Simon from our Office of Business Engagement. And finally, to Matt Merrill, Vice President of Strategy, Performance, and Partnerships at American Family, and who knows this university about as well as anybody could, given his former role as Chief of Staff to the incredible late Becky Blank. It's really difficult to think of a better executive sponsor for our work together. And I'm also grateful because Matt has, from time to time, given me good advice and helped me understand this place better. So thank you to AmFam. Congratulations to American Family as well. And now I'm delighted. I think next up is you, Matt, or is it you, Jay? Okay, all right, just making sure. Next up is Matt Merrill. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. I'm truly honored to be here. And on behalf of our chair and CEO, Bill Westrate, really appreciate this honor and the recognition from the Regents. As Chancellor Mnuchin referenced, I am extremely fortunate to have observed and helped play a small role in this partnership really since over its past 10 years and on both sides of the aisle here, both as a university employee and now more recently as an employee at American Family Insurance. And I think what is unique about this is that it's the marriage between two really preeminent institutions with local history, but punching above their weight nationally, with exceptional national reputations, and in the case of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, an international reputation. And we're institutions grounded in the community who will continue to exist on the university well beyond its 176th anniversary, and for American Family well beyond our upcoming 100th anniversary here. And those long time horizons allow us to plan and work towards mutually beneficial goals, unbound by the needs necessarily of needing to create immediate short-term value. We can invest in partnerships that will have long-term benefit across a wide range of initiatives. And so the Chancellor did a fantastic job recapping some of the areas of partnership there. But I would just note a few other. Obviously, we played an important role in the establishment of the American Family Insurance Data Science Institute. Kyle Kramer, who's in the audience, and I are close colleagues and are continuing to work on ways that we take the investment that we've made now over the past 7 years, continue that forward, and generate new research and insights, both for the general academic community and also for application in industry. We've supported the Creative Destruction Lab, which was referenced just in our presentation right before this. We've established distinguished faculty chairs in business and in data science, and we've helped students in the creation of and support of the launch of SuccessWorks, a career center enhancing career readiness and availability for LNS students. Of course, we've also been a deep partner with athletics and very proud of that relationship as the official insurance sponsor of Wisconsin Athletics. And I would note that on the university, or on the industry side, we've benefited extraordinarily from a pipeline of really incredible talent, which dots our organizational chart from the intern who I just recently hired as a full-time student out of the business school, our current intern in my unit, who's out of the Nelson School, all the way up to the very highest levels of the organization. Our chief product officer is an alumni. Our chief financial officer is an alumni, and that's just a small subsection. And so I'm really honored to be here to accept the award. I'm also extraordinarily pleased to note that earlier this year, we executed an extension of our long-term partnership agreement, going from the 10 years which have now passed into the 5 years in the future, continuing that spirit of focus on long-term, sustainable, mutually beneficial partnership that can help two fantastic Wisconsin institutions thrive now and into the future. So I'll end just closing by saying thank you again. Thank you to Regent President Bogost, President Rothman, Chancellor Mnuchin, and on behalf of the partners, both current and future, including, of course, Regent Salzwedel, who have helped to build this important relationship. Really an honor, and thank you very much again.
And of course, you know that it's not an official awards presentation until everyone has spoken. I am last, and I will be brief. It is my honor to be able to say a few words about the enormous impact that American Family Insurance has had across the universities of Wisconsin to help the state grow and expand. You know, I think you've heard about employees, you've heard about the impact of students. I'm particularly grateful for American Family for the career rotation programs and intern programs that they have at American Family that benefit so many of the students on this campus. As the universities of Wisconsin, we know that we have a significant role in producing talent for our state and are a talent magnet for the state of Wisconsin. Our ability to be able to partner with businesses like American Family is absolutely critical to powering up that workforce pipeline that is so important to keeping Wisconsin economically vibrant and secure. From my perspective, it is great to see two iconic institutions in both the UW-Madison and American Family work together for the mutual benefit of our students and of the state of Wisconsin. And I certainly look forward to that partnership continuing to grow and flourish. And I am grateful for that partnership, Matt, from you and anyone and your team. And with that, Regent Bogos, we can get to the official awards presentation.
Finally, okay. All right, on behalf of the Board of Regents, I would like to present the Regent Business Partnership Awards to American Family Insurance, represented by Matt Merrill, and to Chancellor Mnuchin for the UW-Madison. So let's see which is which.
Thank you.
Before we continue, we're going to do a 10-minute break. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get started again. Regent Vice President Weather, I like that you're running. Very nice. Okay. I'll now call upon Regent Menedides to present a report from the Capital Budget and Planning Committee.
Bogos. The Capital Planning and Budget Committee met yesterday to consider two items and hear the host university presentation by Associate Vice Chancellor Cindy Torstweit on building the future. The presentation focused on the criticality of the built environment to the university's mission of research, education, and outreach. Ms. Torstweit report touched upon the development of new flexible solutions for active learning, enabling groundbreaking research through laboratory upgrades, and supporting Wisconsin economic growth through the development of industry partnership space within the new engineering building. The presentation highlighted the challenges facing the university, due in part to the increasing age of its buildings and its backlog of deferred maintenance. UW-Madison has launched two initiatives as precursors to an update to their long-range campus plan, a facilities condition assessment, and a space utilization and demand study. These studies will provide the university with critical data to help inform and align decision-making with the needs of its students, faculty and staff, community and industry partners. The presentation concluded with an overview of the 2025-27 capital budget priorities, the humanities building replacement, and a new residence hall and dining hall renovations. The committee reviewed and approved the consent agenda covering one land transfer and two all-agency projects at Stevens Point and Madison. We concluded the meeting with an update by Senior Associate Vice President Alex Rowe on the recent State Building Commission actions and schedule for the next steps in the capital budgeting process. Madam President, this concludes my report. I move resolutions D1 and D2, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Ready to vote? On those, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, Regent Menedides. Next, we'll call on Regent Prince to present the report of the Education Committee.
Thank you, Regent President Bogost. The Education Committee approved 7 degree programs, a faculty handbook, and discussed how campuses, faculty, and students are using and continuing to explore AI. We approved UW-Eau Claire Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science in Artificial Intelligence. These majors will prepare students to use AI tools, influence how organizations adapt AI tools, and create new AI tools. Students will be better prepared for any data-driven occupation that employs data scientists, statisticians, market research analysts, marketing specialists, operations research analysts, database architects, as well as any occupation that involves digital media, digital humanities, or digital social sciences. UW Green Bay, Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice. This proposal is driven by the success of the existing criminal justice minor, which has seen rapid enrollment growth and is among the most popular minors at UW Green Bay. Implementing a major in criminal justice will respond to strong student demand, regional workforce needs, and the university's mission to promote opportunity, inclusion, and civic engagement. UW-Madison, Master of Fine Arts in Dance. The program will fill a growing niche in the field of dance and the contemporary need for technologically innovative and culturally aware dancers, choreographers, directors, and educators. Graduates of the MFA in dance will be well prepared for various professional pathways within academia and beyond. And since TikTok is still here, those job prospects look just fine. UW-Madison, Bachelor of Science in Plant Science and Technology. The merger of UW-Madison's departments, UW-Madison departments of agronomy and horticulture to form the Department of Plant and Agroecosystem Sciences, created the opportunity to implement a new array of programming that prepares undergraduate students for the demands of industry, research, and postgraduate study in an evolving field. There is a shortage of bachelor's level workers trained in plant science and technology in Wisconsin and across the nation. UW-Milwaukee, a Bachelor of Science in Medical Laboratory Science. This elevates the existing medical laboratory science concentration within the BS in biomedical sciences. Pre-professional components provide foundational knowledge, and in the professional phase, where students gain in-depth content knowledge and hands-on laboratory experiences, and they apply their training in a clinical internship, preparing students to specialize in diagnostic laboratory testing. And UW Parkside, Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience. The program develops a new major from the current neuroscience concentration, utilizing existing resources to provide students with an in-depth and interdisciplinary perspective on neuroscience. Students will be prepared to enter the workforce as entry-level researchers in the health sciences, biotechnology, or similar science fields and graduate studies. That's not all we did. We also approved revisions to the faculty personnel rules in UW Stout's faculty, academic staff, and limited appointees handbook. These changes are intended to align policy with practice and communicate clear processes to the faculty. The revisions were developed in consultation with and approved by the Chancellor and appropriate campus governance bodies, including the Faculty Senate and Provost, who together presented the resolution and showed directly the collaborative nature of UW Stout's process. And I will add, this was definitely a collaborative nature. We discussed AI in action and how it is advancing the UWs. After a brief historical overview of AI's rapid development and the revolutionary changes it is causing, our discussion focused on how UWs are continuing to use AI and involve in this space. We saw how AI is advancing not only specific academic programs, but across all disciplines and impacting university operations. Panelists from UW-Whitewater, UW Stout, UW-Platteville, UW-Stevens Point, and UW-Oshkosh explored how campus work groups and researchers are considering AI's future use and applications, and explain the need for additional campus AI resources. And just a bit of context, this was a very collaborative effort. Every provost from every campus was involved in this. We concluded with a host presentation from UW-Madison, focused on the student experience with AI. Facilitated by Professor Jeremy Morris, students Lydia Boyce, Elena Hine, and Jackson Kundi discussed the integration of AI into daily school, work, and personal routines, the role of AI in undergraduate research opportunities, and how considerations about AI are influencing thinking about and preparation for an evolving job market. Regent President, this concludes my report, but I do move for adoption by the board Resolution C1, C2, C4, C5, C6, C7, C8, and D. I will then separately move for the adoption of Resolution C3.
Thank you. First, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And discussion on C minus C3.
Well said.
Now, hearing none, let's vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Regent President Bogost. I would now move approval of Resolution C3, and just to remind you, that is the UW Green Bay Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Regent Nixon.
Following the advice of Mr. Chaudhuri this morning, this is respectful disagreement among parties, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. Just for a little background, before I was on the Regents, anything the University of Green Bay wanted, and its excellent chancellor, its excellent provost, and its outstanding graduates, I would be in favor of. But I wear a different hat now. I wear a hat for an entire system. And one of the things I've been extremely interested in, Vice President Britz, which is I wasn't, but is program array. And it's one of the things when I stopped in the speaker's office and talked about program array was a topic of discussion. In other words, how many programs we have at how many different universities and how we decide which universities get programs, which don't, and when we eliminate programs. I want to speak to this one a little bit because I have familiarity with it from my experiences in northeastern Wisconsin. One of the things that concerns me here is Oshkosh is extremely close in proximity to Green Bay, and it has had a criminal justice major for many years, and a successful one. And there was relatively little discussion of interaction or impacts other than noting that Oshkosh did in fact have a program. So proximity concerns me here that we're approving a major in a program that's quite close to another university that has a similar program. In addition, I believe this is now the 6th, perhaps, major in criminal justice that we're allowing in the system. That raises another question. How many criminal justice majors should there be in the University of Wisconsin system? I don't know that I know an answer, but this one concerns me because I know something about it, because of regional proximity issues, and because of just general array issues. So despite this being my university, by the way, the Provost Burns, your write-up was excellent, and I would expect nothing less than an excellent write-up from you. I don't support this, and I have talked at length with Vice President Britz and with Regent Prince about it. That's all I am going to say. Now I will do what I don't do very well. I will sit here and I will be quiet.
Thank you. Regent Tyler.
I share your concern, Regent Nixon, with program array and duplication. And oftentimes in the technical college system, we have discussions about duplication. Nearly all of our institutions there have nursing programs as an example. And that's just a response to the workforce needs. I think I would have more concern about duplication here if the situation in Northeast Wisconsin was different. But it is, in my mind, one of the, a very collaborative area. I'm hopeful that, although we didn't talk about it in the Education Committee, I'm hopeful that some of the technical college programs will transfer into these, and that becomes a pipeline and an opportunity for more students. That has been common with Oshkosh and with Green Bay, working very closely with Northeast Wisconsin Technical College. So my understanding is there was no objection by Oshkosh on this, which I believe would indicate that there's sufficient interest to maintain the program, including the addition of this one. So I'm in favor of this because I think it's responding to workforce needs.
Thank you. Any further? Regent Prince?
If I could speak to this, thank you very much. Let me say this, that I respect Regent Nixon's view on this one, and I am on the side of really looking at program array, what we have in the system already, what we offer in the system. But for this one, I'd ask you to take a look at it through a different lens. Yes, they are, I haven't mapped out the route. I'd say they're probably about an hour drive apart in the good weather. In the bad weather, they are not. They are not looking for students. They already have an overload of students who have done the minor in criminal justice, so they have ready-made students for this program. I would also say there are a couple of things. Geography is definitely one thing to look at, but let us just be real. It's not the only thing. Try to close a program in a geographic region where one of our legislators say absolutely not, and I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm just saying that we have to look at a broader context. There are ready-made students for this program. I would also like my colleagues to know that there are 2 playbooks that we are working on specifically for you. One is around AI. You notice that we just approved 2, and we want to make sure that what we don't get in front of us are 50 programs wanting to have bachelors in AI. So we'll be looking at that as well. The other is the playbook around program array. It's necessary to look at. I'm the executive sponsor for what I think is a really great working group, and that working group is actually looking at program elimination, program suspension, and coming up with a recommendation that will come back to this board. I also would suggest that geographical workforce needs often outweigh whether or not the distance is there. But as you know, as a board, we have returned programs back. This is one that I would respectfully ask that you support. I am in total support of it. And as I said to Vice President Britz, there's sort of a new sheriff in town, and my eyes are on the rubric when it comes for program support, new programs, and I personally would like to see the comments that come from the campuses to ensure that we are not rubber stamping, but that there's also been some discussion. So having said that, I respectfully ask that you support this.
Thank you. Regent Cologne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Generally agree with the statements made by Regent Nixon about how we should be very careful in terms of how we approach our service array and across the different campuses, especially in light of our current situation. So generally and broadly speaking, Regent Nixon, I agree with that. Having said that, after I wasn't part of the committee where I assume there was robust conversations, and after hearing from both Taylor and Regent Prince, I'm going to support this, but
I applaud you, Regent Nixon, for bringing up the issue. I think we need to always consider your points as we continue to ensure the financial viability of this system.
Yes, Regent Salzwedel.
Thank you, appreciate it. I agree with Regent Cologne and his comments, and I will support this. But I do think as we, and I think Regent Vice President Weatherly in his comments yesterday regarding the Platteville presentation.
That was in closed session.
Understood, but understood. But what I'll say is that the idea of program array, the idea of demographic shifts that we'll be seeing over the next 10 to 15 years, the changes in participation rate. I think Regent Underley talked about graduation rates and what we're seeing in the state right now, and all of these shifts in terms of the makeup of the high school graduates and those students that are entering four-year universities. All these are shifting, and it gets to program array, but it gets to the physical plant that we have as a system. It gets to all the things that we touch, and I think it's a bit of the elephant in the room of how we as regents and how the universities of Wisconsin start to handle these. It's a very difficult, I know these are very difficult issues, but I think what we're talking about is basically the same thing, that these are very important and very tough issues. And I know when we talked about it at the retreat, we talked about a 1 year, a 5 year, a 10-year plan in terms of how are we going to start addressing these. I just, your comments, Regent Nixon, bring me back to some of the discussion at the retreat, and I'll support this, but I do think these are big issues for us, and I think we are talking about them, but I think there's more seriousness to it as I look at the demographic shifts that are coming.
Thank you so much.
Regent Weatherly, I hope I didn't go too far on you there.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of C3, say aye. Aye. And all those opposed?
No.
Thank you. Motion carries. And next up is Regent Adams, and we'll give a report on the Audit Committee. Thank you, Regent Adams.
Thank you, Regent President Bogus. The Audit Committee met yesterday and reviewed an update on the progress of the fiscal year 2025 audit plan. Chief Audit Executive Lori Stortz affirmed that her office is making good progress on the fiscal year 2025 audit plan. The committee will continue to review audit reports when we meet again in April. Next, the committee was provided with a results summary of the audits recently issued by the Office of Internal Audit since our last meeting in December 2024. This included the NCAA Athletics Division 1 and 2 agreed upon procedures engagement, executive summary fiscal year 2024, NCAA agreed upon procedures report UW Green Bay, NCAA agreed upon procedures report UW Milwaukee, and NCAA agreed upon procedures report UW Parkside. In response to the committee's November request, there was a demonstration of Internal Audit's new K10 Vision cloud-based audit management system. The system is being used to ensure audit work complies with professional standards, improves client services, and enhances audit efficiency. The Regents inquired about K10 performance dashboards for review at board level from this K10 investment. The committee thanked Phil Pawlowski, Audit Director, for the demonstration. Next, the committee heard from Ed Murphy, Associate Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer, who shared the Office of Information Security Annual Report. We reviewed key milestones, strategic security, system-wide cyber threat communication, a security dashboard, and phishing awareness. We then discussed Resolution F1 that concerns updates to the Board of Regents Audit Committee Charter and revisions to the bylaws of the Board of Regents to rename the Audit Committee. The committee discussed changing its name to reflect our increased focus on compliance and risk management. We also discussed Resolution F2, the update to the Office of Internal Audit Charter. Both resolutions passed unanimously in committee. The committee thanked Chief of Audit Executive Lori Stortz for her leadership in this work. The committee raised questions regarding the impact of recent presidential executive orders pertaining to audit, risk, and compliance matters, and shared expectations regarding updates that may be impactful to our universities. Finally, Chris McIntosh, UW-Madison Director of Athletics, joined by members of his leadership team, shared the annual UW-Madison Athletic Report. The Regents thanked Director McIntosh for his presentation and for all of he and his team's work during this challenging landscape of college athletics, while continuing to put UW-Madison student athletes first. Madam Chair, that concludes my report. Now, I move to approve Resolution F1, the update to the Board of Regents Audit Committee Charter, including the name change from Audit to Audit, Risk, and Compliance Committee, and bylaws of the Board of Regents, and F2, the update to the Office of Internal Audit Charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Adams. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, before we vote, I will note that a 2/3 majority is required to approve a revision of the board's bylaws. Unless there's an objection, we'll consider both of these resolutions together. Any objections? Great, hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. At this time, we're going to excuse the provost, our amazing provost from all the campuses. They are having a meeting with all the provosts throughout the state, the first ever unified provost meeting. So thank you, and thank you for attending the Regent meeting, and good luck with your meeting. So I'll give you a minute or two before we proceed to take off and get to your meeting, your next meeting. Thank you. Okay, we'll continue with Regent Rye, who is on camera. Go ahead, Regent Rye. Report on the Business and Finance Committee.
Thank you, Regent President Bogos. The Business and Finance Committee acted on its agenda as follows. First, the committee heard a presentation from our host campus in which Vice Chancellor Rob Kramer and Associate Vice Chancellor David Murphy provided an overview of finances, challenges, and priorities at UW-Madison. The committee then approved an agreement on behalf of UW-Milwaukee with Re-Up Education, which provides re-enrollment and retention services to students who left the university prior to degree completion. Under the initial 4-year term of the agreement, UWM will pay a percentage of tuition for each returning student. This initiative is part of UW-Milwaukee's continued efforts to improve graduation rates and student outcomes. Next, the committee approved a memorandum of agreement on behalf of UWM regarding the naming of laboratories in recognition of a private donation made to the UWM Foundation. The $2 million gift supports the Great Lakes Research Vessel Construction Fund for the School of Freshwater Sciences. Committee then approved the UW status report on large or high-risk information technology projects. The report presented by Chief Information Officer Stephen Hopper provides the status and noteworthy updates for 7 major IT projects across the universities. The total project portfolio is $243.3 million, a 1.3% decrease compared to the August 2024 report. Next, the committee approved the annual report on the strategic plans for major IT projects. This report offers an inventory of all ongoing and new projects, both enterprise-wide and university-specific, and includes information on each project's business need, impact, staffing requirements, and budget. Both reports will be submitted to the legislature's Joint Committee on Information Policy and Technology pursuant to state statute. Next, Associate Vice President Van Passmore presented the findings of the UW Student Affordability Review, which was first conducted in 2022. The review indicates that while the universities of Wisconsin remain the most affordable in the Midwest, declining participation of low-income and first-generation students suggests that affordability remains a barrier for some. The report does show that the 2023-24 Wisconsin tuition promise led to enrollment gains for those student groups, underscoring the importance of this provision in our state budget request. The committee then received a report on gifts, grants, and contracts awarded to all universities for the first 6 months of this fiscal year. Total awards through last December were approximately $1.4 billion. This is an increase of over 20% from the same period in the prior year and is largely attributed to research grants. Next, the committee received the mid-year budget to action actuals report, which reflects the status of UW's budget by major areas of activity in comparison to actual financial experience for the first half of fiscal year 25. The report indicates that in aggregate, revenues represents 51% of the revised budget forecast and expenses represent 47.5%. UW-Oshkosh was highlighted as an example of how the report reflects the work being done to monitor campus finances, including aggressively reducing expenses and decreasing revenues. I actually misquoted a number yesterday in the committee. I'd like to correct myself on Oshkosh's great work. I mentioned that 92% of students would be returning from the fall semester to the spring semester. I was corrected after the meeting. It's actually 93%. Congratulations to Oshkosh. The committee then received the 2024 Q3 report from the UW Office of Trust Funds. As of September 30th, assets in the SWIB managed portfolio totaled $648 million, with gains in the long-term fund and income cash fund of 5.2% and 1.3% respectively. Assets in the intermediate term fund totaled $726 million after gains of 4.6% for that quarter, performing in line with its benchmark. Lastly, the committee approved revisions to Regent Policy 2027 that allow the system president to determine the appropriate selection process, filling vacancies in consultation with the Regent president and members of the board's executive committee for specified senior leadership positions at universities of Wisconsin administration. That concludes my report, and on behalf of the Business and Finance Committee, I now move approval of resolutions E, F, G, H, and M.
Second.
Thank you very much, Regent Rye. I heard a second. Any discussion? No discussion, hearing none. Can we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Regent Rye. And next up, we're going to hear an update on Administrative Transformation Program Implementation, better known as ATP, which is targeted to go live this summer. President Rothman, would you like to say a few words about the ATP?
Yes, I would. Thank you and good morning. ATP, as it is known, is an ambitious but necessary modernization project to tackle the unsustainable level of complexity in the current administrative environment across the universities of Wisconsin. Addressing that reality is something that is embedded in our strategic plan priorities, as well as being just plain common sense. As part of building an administrative infrastructure for the future, ATP is expected to standardize processes, organize roles, and modernize technology with the Workday cloud-based enterprise resource planning software. That is a mouthful. What I am particularly looking forward to is having data in real time and data that is going to give us, be able to make from which decisions can be made. Today we will receive a review of the background and business case for the project to refresh the board's recollection, an update on the project activities and progress, and an update on the key risks and readiness for go live, and a discussion of the expectation for the rollout starting July 1st of this year. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the executive sponsors and the executive director for ATP. But before I do that, with Rob and Stephen and Julie here, I would just like to thank them personally. This is a significant lift for us. And on the July 1st deadline, the July 1st effective date, as Stephen has told me multiple times, the work really begins. So this is an enormous change management that we have to go through, but this will get us and position us to be in a much better posture moving forward with our HR and our financial data. So I wanted to personally thank them, and we'll turn it over to them for the presentation this morning.
Well, thank you. I think I'm going to make just a couple brief opening comments from my role as executive sponsor. When the Board of Regents first approved this in October of 2020, I was at University of Wisconsin System Administration at that point. I had also served at University of Wisconsin-Platteville as Chief Financial Officer, and I was convinced of the need to do this project. The President, you've spoken about the need to standardize, the need to get better data and information, and I'd observed those challenges from those perspectives. Having now been at University of Wisconsin-Madison for a number of years, I am more convinced than ever that this project is really important in terms of going live with Workday, but also the larger program that we refer to Administrative Transformation Program, continuing to really look at ways to standardize across many of our administrative areas to capture similar benefits outside of just HR and finance going forward, and really changing our culture around how we think about these programs. So I'm pleased to be here. I appreciate the kind comments. The work has been done by thousands of people across the entire University of Wisconsin. I want to thank them for all of their hard efforts to get us to this place.
Thank you. If we can start the slides. So I just wanted to, just briefly start out with just the executive summary. I think, the reality is this is once in a generation sort of modernization effort. These projects are extremely challenging. They're complex. And as President Rothman noted, perfection is not going to be possible. We can't expect bumps along the way. And we can't expect a period of stabilization, as we acclimatize to the new solution. As Vice Chancellor Kramer indicates, it will be worthwhile. It's going to be both immediate short-term benefits and long-term opportunities, really creating a powerful foundation from which we can build and grow. There are real risks to us having a successful go-live. We are continuously tracking those. I'll talk about a few of them today. But we are on track for a successful July 2025 go-live, and we are currently within the budget of the project. So I wanted to do a little bit of just recap. I know we have a lot of new regents, new chancellors, new CBOs, but what's our journey been like to get here? Went back to the October 2020 business case. We brought to the board. And you can see there, identified several significant and persistent challenges. The technology that we did have was costly for its value, inefficient, impeded financial controls, et cetera. And we had inconsistent processes across our universities, really lacking basic modern things like accrual accounting and the like. So the conclusion of that report was the status quo is unsustainable and that we should move forward immediately to really close these gaps and create a better future for ourselves. So all those are words. I think sometimes it's better to see it as a picture. So when I started close to 7 years ago, I asked the team to put together what does our current environment look like? This is what came back. This is one fraction of one campus's IT environment. And so, when I looked at this, I said, oh my gosh. But as I started inspecting these individual areas, like every decision to get to here made sense in isolation. But then when you step back and look at it across 30, 40 years, it looks like this, right? And so as you can see from something like this, it's very complex, it's fragile. Clearly, there's going to be a poor user experience of like, where do I go? How do I do this? Scatters our data everywhere, really hard to secure, and is generally unsustainable. So this is kind of, again, a picture of like, it's not a matter of like, if we solve this problem, but it was when we solved this problem. And just like, in real estate, when was the best time to buy? 15 years ago. That was sort of the idea behind like why we need to do this now, why we need to invest, why we need to get sustainable. So if you sort of boil it down to like my one sentence answer of like, what are we doing with ATP, is to create that sustainable environment, simplify and standardize our processes along the way, give our users a much higher quality experience in interacting with these tools while giving us better, more reliable data and reducing our cybersecurity risk and footprint. So again, how do we specifically get to this point? As I mentioned before, back in October of 2020, we brought this business case to the board. It originally started as a two-phase, 5-year project, where we were going to go UW-Madison first over the first 3 years, and then we were going to follow with all the non-Madison campuses later. What the team at the time realized going into that was really not a realistic goal, because there needed to be a solid foundation. We needed to have Milwaukee and the comprehensives at the table to help design the solution so that it met the need. So at the time, it was then decided we would do a unified approach in May of 2021, and we would be able to get this done in 3 years. I think we owe the prior administration a debt of gratitude for this unified approach and really accelerating this. But project management 101 of how do you combine, how do you do the same amount of things in a 60% shorter timeline? You cut scope, right? Like that's how you do it. And so what got cut out at the time were all of the campus ancillary systems around Workday that needed to work, as well as giving the universities time to adopt the processes as well as the data and data warehousing around it. So when I assumed leadership of this program in February of 2023, almost literally 2 years ago, that was one of the first things that I heard and saw, that all of those things that we cut out of scope were essential to the success of our universities. And so that's when we brought back a timeline revision in October of 2023 that moved us then to a July 2025 go live, incorporating those things into scope and making sure we could be holistically successful, not just successful in releasing the Workday solution. And so we are, as I mentioned before, are on track to deliver there. That puts us completing 1 year before the original timeline and within the original budget that was allocated. And so, we've said it a number of times, why are these projects so hard, right? How hard could this possibly be? And I think the answer is that, for us humans, change is hard. And generally, the larger the scope, the harder the change. So for us, we are changing every HR, finance, procurement, and budget process across all the universities. We're eliminating hundreds of customizations. It's going to provide the opportunity to replace over 700 ancillary systems that were filling the gaps of our current solutions. And this is just an enormous data conversion project. When we go live with Workday, we're going to have 31 million rows of data, loaded into that system that sort of represents a conversion from our old to our new. That's hundreds of millions of individual pieces of data that will be in there. The larger the population, the harder the change. Right, so we're going to essentially touch some aspect of the lives of every faculty and staff across the universities of Wisconsin. And then the shorter the transition, the harder the change. So from a user perspective, this thing's going to go live overnight. One day they're going to be doing one thing, the next day they're going to be doing something else. And so it's really just a high degree of complexity and sort of I have a reputation of coming up with transportation analogies. And so the one that sort of immediately comes to mind is what you see on the right here. It's called Hagen-D. So in 1967, Sweden changed from driving on the left-hand side of the road to the right-hand side of the road overnight. And I equate sort of what we're doing to that, right? So normally, we have people come and go all the time, every day in our systems, but the core of our faculty and our staff know how to use the systems, and it works fine. What we are doing with this project, we are taking every single person, and overnight, none of them have used the system before to conduct business. Saying we're moving everybody from the left-hand side of the road to the right-hand side of the road, and with that comes confusion, right? I mean, there's just an element of the challenge there. And so ultimately, the Hagen-D in Sweden was successful, and this is one of the first times in human history that, the reason it was successful is they used formalized change management to help their citizens adapt to this. And so that's, we've adopted sort of the same thing. So there's the folks who study this, there's this thing called the change curve, right? So anytime you introduce a big change, it kind of starts with the early euphoria of like, oh, this is going to be great. And you get a little bit farther in, it's like, ooh, I don't know about this, right? And you sort of proceed down this slope, and ultimately you wind up at the other end of, adaptation and commitment. Like, this is the right thing to do. This is how it works. So this is just a natural part of being human. We all go through this, in sort of pop psychology world. It's the 7 stages of grief that we go through, right? And so this exists with any sort of solution here. So this is sort of our foundation, and we've really designed a change management program around this. It involves accurate and timely communications, stakeholder engagement, and then ultimately getting to end user training, like actually hands on the keyboard, helping people adopt this, understand it, work through it. And all of these things are designed to flatten that curve. We know that there's going to be that dip, but we want to make that as shallow as we can, as quick as we can. So just as an example, we've been engaging across our universities. We did what we called pre-training learning events. So these are open houses where we actually, set up, invited people across the campuses and got them to look at it, touch it, get feedback. And we got some, really, really positive feedback from the various folks at the campuses. And again, it's designed to help them understand it, to see it, to get comfortable with it before they're thrust into training and ultimately having to use this in July. So I want to talk a little bit about the benefits. We sort of referenced them generally here. We actually identified a list of 225 intended benefits. Our quality assurance vendor, who kind of goes along with us on this project and makes sure we're staying on track and doing the right things. Last year, they indicated that we're still on track to realize 88% of these. I've included a list up here. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but just a couple of things I'd like to point out. There under the overall benefits, the last bullet there, workflow transparency. We all experience this every day when we order from Amazon and the like. One of the revolutionary things that they did is that you can, from your order to it getting to your door, you can see everywhere it is along the way. And that's very helpful to us. And the same thing will be true here by having a standard business process that is transparent in the system. Everybody will always be able to see where their process is, where it's going, and ultimately we'll then have metrics on how quickly did it happen, where can we improve things, make things more efficient, et cetera. So that's going to be a very big benefit. On the HR side, today, many of our campuses have separate recruiting systems. In Workday, there's all going to be there. So what this means is HR staff, once somebody got hired, had to go and do duplicate data entry to put them into our system. With Workday, it's a seamless process to go from recruitment to hiring, and then a comprehensive, uniform onboarding process for all employees. On the finance side, just simply moving from cash-based accounting to accrual-based accounting is an enormous leap forward for doing, understanding our finances in real time, being able to forecast properly, et cetera. And then on the right-hand side, the future opportunities. I think this really sets us up well for shared services in the future. One of the biggest barriers that we've had is that if every campus has a different process, they're doing things differently, you can't really get the scale you need. So by that fact alone, it enables that in the future to really expand and make that much more meaningful, much more powerful. And so as we sort of shift from the theoretical, here's what the benefits, I think at the end of the day, we all want to make sure this thing works when it goes live. So what are we doing to make sure that is the case? So I think first and foremost, I think we have to acknowledge there have been some incredibly public challenges in this space of large universities having struggled. So I've listed a few here. We knew this was the case going in. There have been several of these that have emerged since. But what I want to help everybody understand is what we are doing to avoid being that university. So first of all, this actually started before we even began this project. So several of us, I know I went on one, I know Julie was on one. We actually made peer visits to several universities, Yale, UT Austin, Vanderbilt, and the like, Ohio State. to understand like, what were your challenges? What did you, and so we baked in a lot of those to the foundation of our program to try and improve. The next thing, when I agreed to take on this role, one of the first things I realized was we were not properly investing in our universities. They're a major player in this. We have a central team doing this work, but it could not be possible without all the hard work of the people at the universities doing their day-to-day job while also doing the work to transition to these systems. So what we did is we invested $16 million in helping them do direct hires, backfill, stipends, the things that, to really make this possible. We've been engaging in testing, and more testing. I'll talk a little bit about some of our metrics there to make sure the system is actually right when we go live, really focusing on training. We've developed a watch list methodology for issues that come up, how we quickly address them and move them on. And then finally, a readiness scorecard that actually tracks, are we on track? Are we going to be able to do the major things? And that drives our decision-making going forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. From a testing perspective, there's sort of three big buckets of types of testing we do. End-to-end testing, that's where we actually are testing the mechanics of the system. User experience testing, where we're actually putting it in the hands of users and getting their feedback. And then finally, payroll parallel testing, where we're actually comparing, like, are we getting the right numbers and are people going to get paid properly? So you can see the metrics there. I think it's quite a big number. 17,000 tests, 98% pass. 26,000 user experience tests across almost 1,600 participants at all 13 universities. Our payroll parallel testing, that's where we run an actual payroll in our current system, and then we run a same payroll in Workday and compare the results line by line. So we are at a 98.14% match right now. Workday would expect us to be at 95% is where we are in the project. So that is going well. We continue to refine that as we go forward. And then ultimately, all of this testing generates defects that we then have to systematically correct before go live. Through this, we have identified 382 such defects. We've resolved 94% of those. We have 49 remaining in our the chart. We're consistently working those through, and we expect to be 100% of critical and high defects before go live. So you might be asking yourself, how are you prioritizing all of this feedback you get? And it truly is kind of an emergency room type situation. There are way more ideas of what we could do than what we can actually do in the time we have. So what we have done is we first of all categorize them by what's a defect, what is going to be materially wrong with the system, and we prioritize those versus enhancements, things that we would like to be able to do, but it just doesn't do right now. And so for those high defects, critical and high, those are the ones we have identified. These are the ones that have to be done before go live, or else it would cause a problem. And then for all of the, what we call just the regular defects, we're going to get as many of those done before go live as we can, and we'll get those done after go live, the remainder as much as possible. And then on the enhancement side, this is where we look with our campus partners to understand, is this going to cause distress? What are the issues going to be? So anything that is going to be an unacceptable level of risk, those are where we're going to focus on and get those before go live. And then everything else is just, they're good ideas, and we're going to have to prioritize them. We're going to have to go live and then work through our governance process post go live to address them. So I gave a few examples there on the right of, we have received some really meaningful, ideas, enhancement suggestions from our campus community, and we've really worked to incorporate that and make sure that we're delivering a successful system, both from a technical, does it do the right thing perspective, but also meets the needs of our universities. Training, we are investing heavily and proactively in training. So at the end of the day, we're going to have over 360 training materials generated. We're going to be delivering role-based training, so direct courses delivered to over 11,000 faculty and staff. So that's essentially like the size of one of our large comprehensive universities. And then that's ultimately going to result in about 54,000 courses being delivered across multiple modalities. Some are going to be in-person things, some are going to be workshops, some are going to be computer-based training. And then we have the broader population of the whole, what we call self-service. So the employees who need to fill out their time cards and do all the things that everybody does in the system. And just a note, I want to point out that because of the way the academic year works, faculty are generally leaving in May and starting in August or September, which is right around our go live. And so that's unfortunate timing because they're not going to be here during the bulk of that. However, we are aware of that. We're taking great care to have some intensive, like when they get back, for the coming fall, really focusing on those 9-month employees and making sure they get trained and can be successful in the system. So we have developed this tool we call the watch list. And so I'm not going to go through everything on the screen. The point I want to make about this is everything that's on the right-hand column, the things that have active mitigations, started on the left-hand column, right? So we essentially have developed this way that we can quickly identify issues, quickly tackle them, quickly remediate them, put active mitigations in place, and then we track them. So leadership team evaluates this every week for any issues and are successfully resolving them. Just a couple of notes on the left-hand side. These are the areas we're still in process of developing mitigations. The first one is the UW-Madison ancillary systems retrofit. So this is all of those systems that day one need to, that aren't Workday but are connected to Workday and need to work. So we have identified plans for remediating 92% of these. It's that remaining 8% that we are systematically working through with the UW-Madison campus to make sure we have very clear plans in place for how those are going to work day one. So we're making great headway, and I'm expecting that to move to the far right column relatively soon. And then the other one, the Act 10 collective bargaining impacts, that's just one that's it's an unknown. We're watching it. If that indeed is upheld in the courts, it basically means we're going to have to do something with unions and collective bargaining, and that's going to involve some changes in the HR system. So again, that's just an example of where we're trying to understand like what is the environment and how are we going to be prepared to respond to these. And the final sort of issue here in this section of how do we know we're ready is we have a whole series of checkpoints. We've developed a scorecard where as we go through the remaining 5 months, we're going to be comparing against that scorecard to determine whether we're ready and can go on to the next step. So right now, as we speak, part of the team is building what we're calling our dress rehearsal. So just it is just like that. If you're familiar with the theater, it's we are running through everything we're going to do at Go Live. We're doing it right now. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to put teams on 24/7 operations, doing the data conversion, and we are practicing for that. We're building it going into June. That is going to then, at the end of that, going to help us understand what are our gaps and how we then prepare and close those gaps for the June build, ultimately leading towards that July Go Live. So what can we expect between now and Go Live? I can say with confidence, readiness concerns are going to emerge. Some are going to be fact-based and others are going to be fear-based. I think we're all very familiar with the telephone game and how that goes. Like, we're humans, that's going to happen. I think what we want for board members, chancellors, CBO, like, we want to know about all of them. So if you have concerns, if you hear concerns, we want to know. I always say, like, we can't fix what we don't know about, but what we do know about, we're going to fix. So that's, we are going to make sure all of our critical and high concern issues are addressed before Go Live. And again, this is a continuous improvement. Everything we can't, we're going to add it to our roadmap and continue to improve. As I mentioned, we are going to address everything. Given the constraints, I can't guarantee we're going to be able to address everything to everybody's satisfaction. That's where we're going to have to make some choices. And again, it's about continuous improvement after Go Live. Operationally, we can expect the system to operate correctly for the preponderance of users and situations. We are going to be able to hire people, pay people, enroll people, buy things, pay our bills, all of these sorts of things. All those big ancillary systems are going to work, right? We're going to be able to collect tuition in the fall and and have it, reflect back in the general ledger. And there's going to be some workarounds, for some period of time as we grow and adapt to the system. Some users will experience some kind of defects, some sort of in the data conversion or new business processes. Again, our tests suggest these will be minimal, but we fully expect there to be something. And our overall pace of business is going to slow down. Just like my example of moving from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, it'll probably take you, a little bit longer to get across town, until everybody, gets acclimated to the routes, how it works, how traffic's going to flow, et cetera. This will be the same here. We'll see a bit of, productivity dip, but expect to, as people form new habits, pick that back up very quickly. Which means for the first 6 months, we are intensely planning on what we call a stabilization process. And for the first 2 months, we're planning something what we call hypercare. So this really sets up a command center-like structure. So similar to how we did like COVID response or, kind of disaster response, it's a series of command centers really designed to quickly identify, aggregate issues, provide enhanced staffing, monitoring, and intensive support, really to, again, knowing that there's going to be bumps, we want those to be smoothed out as quickly as possible and be able to demonstrate progress and responsiveness to the things we see. And then, in January is when we expect to shift to what I would call like ongoing support that we can get that continuous improvement as we go forward. A couple of challenges in the go live in particular. So number one, all of our financial people, they're going to be closing FY25 in PeopleSoft while they're opening FY26 in Workday. And they're going to be shifting from cash accounting to accrual accounting. So some pretty big changes. That's just the nature of it, the reality of it, but something we need to be aware of, cognizant of, and supportive of. The second bullet there, really just the emotional state of everybody involved. Like this has been a huge journey. Everybody is exhausted. There's going to be huge relief when we go live. And that's when it all gets to start and everybody starts, seeing it and touching it and having all the ideas. And, this is not just going to be for the ATP team. This is going to be for all the campus teams as well. It's been, I've just been heartened to see the partnership between all the universities, between, the HR community, the finance community, the IT community. Everybody has worked incredibly hard. Everybody is exhausted. And then we got to pick up and keep moving and keep accelerating after go live. So I think that's just something we need to make sure we give everybody the grace and support to be successful there. And then similarly on the other side of that, all the users, this is new. We're switching to driving on the different side of the road. I've never done this before. It's some combination of scared, excited, confused, maybe some frustration, and all of these things we just need to be able to be calm, give each other grace, and work through it as best we can. And so, in totality, I have a high degree of confidence. We are going to land the plane. It is by no means guaranteed. We need to stay vigilant on our risks, keep in mind all things we're going to do. But I would also like to remind us that once the plane is landed, that's just the beginning of the journey. And so, we need to constantly keep that in mind, because if we don't, we're going to wind up in 10 years, 15 years with the same spaghetti mess of a diagram that I, shared earlier. So with that, I want to, turn it over to Vice President Gordon to close us out.
I knew I didn't want to take the closing position after Stephen and his mad presentation and PowerPoint skills. So I'll just highlight a few things. The three of us sitting here, we're not in our same positions in our same chairs when this program started, but we were all part of it. We were all somewhere at the table. And I do remember a conversation we had early on when we were even naming ATP, and just highlighting for everybody that the P stands for program, not project. And I think that gets to this slide here, that no one sees this as being done. When we had an on-prem system, we would go 7 to 10 years without touching the system in a real significant way. When we are in the cloud, we don't have that option. We are taking and continuously digesting new things coming at us. So even when we go live on July 1, 3 or 4 months later, we'll be taking and implementing possibly additional functionality, looking at what's coming to us from Workday as they push out an upgrade. So That mindset really is important. And that's what I think we're doing. I heard the student spotlight earlier today say you don't communicate just to communicate, but to create. And I think that's what we are doing here with the culture that we are creating. This goes beyond project management. It goes beyond change management. It really is that continuous improvement mindset that we are hoping to put in place. On Wednesday of this week, we even had all of our chief business officers here in town where we talked about what are the most major changes coming as a result of this. How do we walk through those with them and their teams? So, you know, from our smallest campuses to our biggest, to make sure that these new business processes are going to work for them. And then we had our chief business officers adding to that list in some places. One of the things that President Rothman recently asked me is, with this change to accrual accounting, are you going to be able to develop financial statements at the end of the year? So that got added to the list to ensure that we would be able to do that with accrual accounting. And to prepare for that, as part of that continuous improvement, working with the ATP team, but also working with our stakeholders, we've developed accrual accounting training just to make sure that we have the right skill sets for the people in those positions. So I think that's just an example I wanted to share of how we're creating that culture moving forward. I hope this presentation has given all of you some comfort that we have the right pieces in place, that we have the right relationships in place, and we're happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much. That was extremely helpful. And before I open it up for discussion to the Regents, I just wanted to thank Stephen for your analogy with Sweden and the roads and left and right side, because I think early on you used the analogy of a plane crashing. So on behalf of Regent Vice President Weatherly and myself, thank you for not bringing that up, but you did actually land the plane at the end, and it will be landing soon. I also want to just say the word that you use, cooperation, is so important. I can't imagine the amount of people and people power and the cooperation this is taking is really an example, a shining light to all of us. So I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to open up to questions from any regents. And Regent Rye has his hand up.
Can I go?
Go ahead, Regent Rye.
All right, sorry. I've had the honor of being part of business and finance since my first day as a regent. So I've gotten the chance to see the work being done by the three individuals in front of you and all of their people over that time. And I can't tell you how awesome it is to see this finally, come to fruition and the amount of work that they've done. Having been part of offline meetings and then committee meetings, changing a timeline is never easy. Changing a timeline twice in a project and convincing people that you're still going to get it done is very bold. And I really appreciate the bold leadership of Stephen and his colleagues in getting that done. The one thing I asked in committee yesterday, and will re-ask of in front of everybody, is although the $212 million that were approved for this weren't attached to any kind of notable ROI in the business plan when this was passed, we do expect savings, and being good stewards of our resources is very important. I bring that up a lot in committee. So as we do, and hopefully, President Rothman will bring this to us, as we do a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year look backs after ATP implementation, I think it'd be very important that we find some sort of methodology to calculate the savings that we've been able to concretely demonstrate. A reduction in number of FTEs required to get a job done, et cetera. Contracts that we've been able to cancel and save money on. So we look back in 1, 2, 3 years, not only is this a great program, we're more secure, we're streamlined, but we've actually been good stewards of our finances. So I hope we'll be able to do that a year from now, and in 2 years and 3 years, or however long, and find a way for Rob, Julie, the other CBOs to start figuring out how they're going to quantify that. So as a board, we'll be able to look back and demonstrate how good this project was from a cost saving standpoint as well. So that's just the one request I have.
Thank you, Regent Rye. Further discussion? Go ahead, Regent Cruiser.
Appreciate the presentation and all the discussion on this and the humor, because you have to have humor in this. I've been through a much smaller process in this, and it won't be long before people say, remember when we had to do this? This is so much easier. And people are gonna find out so many new things they can do that are gonna save time, which is hard to quantify of how much they save going forward. But there'll be a huge amount of time savings, and it's a difficult project to always move forward, again, moving the timelines and those things, but I'm sure we're gonna reap a lot of benefits on this, and I appreciate all the work and planning that took place in this, and the hand-holding that's gonna be needed. And then the people at the end saying, oh yeah, we should have done this a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other regents? Okay. Thank you so much to Rob Kramer, Stephen Hopper, and Julie Gordon for the excellent presentation. We look forward to seeing the rollout. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, we'll now take a moment to recognize Regent Emeritus Bob Atwell for his service to the UW Board of Regents. I'll now call upon Regent Karen Walsh to present the board's resolution of appreciation to Regent Emeritus Atwell.
Thank you, Regent President Bogus. It's my great honor to be leading our recognition of one of the first friends and colleagues that I made on the board, Regent Bob Atwell. So I want to turn the clock back, if I could, to 2019. Governor Reavers had been sworn in, and when he chose his first 2 7-year term regents, he chose one who had already been there, Ed Manydeeds, who's also been a mentor to me. But then he chose me. And what I didn't know coming into this group was, how was that going to feel? Because everyone else at the table had been appointed by a different governor. So of course, I was nervous, I was a bit anxious. The first person I developed a friendship with was Bob Atwell. And the reason that happened was because Regent President Peterson threw me directly onto the Green Bay Chancellor search and wisely chose Regent Atwell to chair it. And so I got to watch him operate in a number of ways that was very educational for me. I had an idea what it might be like to cultivate relationships with chancellors and why that was important, but to see Bob operate on this campus, it was in Green Bay and he lives in Green Bay, the relationships he had were so incredible to watch. And clearly he cared a great deal about the campus. But not only that, he also took me to dinner at his favorite restaurant in Milwaukee, and Bob, was it Serbian? Yes, he's shaking his head, yes. So he's known there. They walk in, oh yeah, it's Bob again. And I'm sitting down and plate after plate is coming to the table. And I'm sitting there thinking, he's a banker, this has gotta be Dutch. Right? And I'm thinking that I'm glad I had some money in my wallet because this was all new territory. But I'll tell you, the conversation we had over dinner and the conversations we had during the search made me feel so welcome and so respected, and feel like Bob knew that I needed to learn from him, but I think he also felt that he would learn from me. And over the years, we have had, to some people's surprise, I think, a pretty darn good relationship. Part of the reason for that is we make each other laugh a lot, but also I think we listen to each other. The 3 years I was in leadership, if I had an issue that I really needed to think through and talk through with somebody, I had a short list, and Bob Atwell was on it. So I'm so grateful for your mentorship, not only to me, but for the regents that followed in the years after, as we all adjusted to being appointed by a different governor, but with the solid value that we were all pulling for the same thing. And I really felt like Bob was at the forefront, at least from my personal experience. And if all of us can approach things that way, this board will accomplish even more. And it's just so impressive to know that he took the time for that. He was very passionate about his work as a regent. He worked hard. One of the things Regent President Peterson told me when I came on was, well, Karen, there's workhorse regents and there's show horse regents. And Bob Atwell was a workhorse regent. And he's even gone on to share his expertise with the folks downtown who wanted to get together and talk about what might the future of the UW system look like. And it gave me some comfort to know that Bob was at the table. Bob knows us well, he knows the system well. He also constantly pushed for more financial oversight, more financial budgeting that made sense. And I thought to myself, well, he's probably doing that because he's a banker, he's always looking at the bottom line and he's always looking at the spreadsheets. But it started to sink in, and I think not only with me, and what we needed was the right catalyst in our leader, President Rothman, to step back and say, how can we really transform this in the system? And how can we make our use of state resources make sense? And that process with Deloitte, Bob, I hope you accept a piece of that credit pie for yourself, because I have it drummed into my head now, and I smile every time I think about you putting your glasses down on your nose and lecturing us about money. It was definitely listened to and appreciated. So Bob, I'm going to read your resolution now. Whereas Robert Atwell has served the citizens of Wisconsin with distinguished leadership during his 7 years on the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents from 2017 through 2024. Whereas Bob's 34 years of experience as a banker in the state of Wisconsin contributed to his strong advocacy for financial transparency and thoughtful stewardship practices during his 7 years on the Business and Finance Committee, including 2 years as vice chair, as well as his service on the Business and Finance Committee's Subcommittee on Investments. And whereas, as chair of the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee, Bob supported advancing the roles of research and business and industry partnerships, significant components of UW's mission. Whereas Bob served on several other standing committees, including the Audit Committee, the Personnel Matters Review Committee, and the Committee on Student Discipline and Other Student Appeals. And I might add here, it's not listed, but Bob was one of my at-large appointments to the Executive Committee, and I was always grateful to have him there. Whereas Bob, a staunch advocate for advancing excellence, highlighted the efforts and contributions of outstanding faculty and staff throughout the universities of Wisconsin, serving on the board's Academic Staff Excellence Awards Committee and Diversity Awards Committee. Whereas Bob helped select strong university leadership, chairing the Special Regent Committee and Search and Screen Committee for the UW Green Bay Chancellor Search. Whereas Bob was a tireless advocate for incorporating civil discourse, critical thought, and mutual respect into higher education, offering students opportunities to reach their full potential and become well-rounded, civically engaged members of their communities. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System hereby offers heartfelt thanks and commendation to Robert Atwell for his dedicated service to the state of Wisconsin and wishes him well in his future endeavors.
I get to say a few things, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm watching the clock.
Now you got me self-conscious about my glasses. I'm really happy to be here with you today. I intend to be sincerely affectionate, somewhat challenging, and mercifully brief. I'm very grateful to former Governor Scott Walker for appointing me to the UW Board of Regents in the year 3 BC, before COVID, that is. As I came on the board, Governor Evers was the only Democrat remaining on the board. And I want to note there was a certain decency and even sort of solitary nobility in his bearing. As I speak today, my youngest son, George, is choosing between UW-Stevens Point and Michigan Tech. If he chooses Point, he will be my 9th child to attend a UW school, and Point will be the 5th campus I will have experienced directly as a parent. So if the Regents were a consumer focus group, you could not find a more prolific participant. Many people offer anecdotes about campus life. I have statistics. And I'm very grateful for all the UW has done for my family. And I'm also very aware of how far short of our aspirations we fall. My qualifications for nomination to the board were that I was sufficiently Republican, I was from Northeast Wisconsin, and I cared a lot about higher education. My dad worked his whole career in higher ed, including a stint at UW-Madison from 1965 to 70. As my confirmation hearing approached in 2017, I heard that Senator Noss was going to vote against me because of my father's liberal insider credentials. It might surprise some of you that I was thought to be a potential liberal Manchurian candidate. Apparently, I was able to disarm the senator's concern by thanking him for at least not disparaging my mother. And he laughed and ultimately voted for me. My father passed away in October of 2023, but we had 6 years for him and I to share experiences and thoughts about higher ed. My dad couldn't care less that I founded the 2nd largest bank in Wisconsin, nor that our family gave him 11 grandchildren and a growing mob of great-grandchildren, but he was sure proud that I was a UW Regent. He wanted his ashes spread on Bascom Hill, but we settled for mingling a small container of Bascom Hill dirt, bearing the apostolic blessing of Chancellor Mnuchin with his ashes. Thank you, Jennifer. Dad, thanks for my life, your care, and your love for higher education. To my Regent colleagues, past and present, thank you for the time together. The best part of the journey has been getting to know each of you. There's an oft-used phrase that it's nothing personal, it's just business. This phrase will figure prominently in my future book on timeless platitudes that were never true. Some stupid ideas never seem to die. Everything we do in, for, and around people is personal. And this has been a rich personal experience made richer by many of you in this room. Thank you. I've been critical of much that goes on within UW. I am certainly not indifferent. It took me decades to unlearn my 8th grade English teacher's horror of double negatives. But I'm well into the 4th quarter of my game clock, and it's a great season to reflect on the things that I once firmly believed and now no longer believe. For among the most essential skills in life is to be willing to try things, to be willing to be wrong, and self-reflective enough to recognize when you are wrong. What applies to me also applies to the UW. We need to be more humble, more self-reflective, more generous, and more willing to admit our screw-ups and to correct course. An oft-repeated phrase that I do hold to be true is, hate is not the opposite of love, indifference is. These are painfully tumultuous times in the US, and our state is at the epicenter of the social, political, demographic, and economic battles that swirl around us and within us. UW is once again in a state budget battle with very high stakes, and we are also subject to the rapid changes in federal policy. None of this is easy, but adversity holds much opportunity, and it falls to the people in this room to find the opportunity in these problems. We inevitably at Regent spend a lot of time on economic matters. It seems that money is the language of discourse in our American culture. And I'm not saying money doesn't matter, far be it from that. But perhaps it's easier to speak of money than the deeper challenges. And I can tell you in 40 years of banking, I've yet to see an organization financially fail in the absence of a deeper cause. Money problems accompany the scene of financial failure much as blood accompanies the scene of a car crash. We react to our critics by asserting and exaggerating the economic impact of our work. We will be well served by rediscovering that the core purpose of this university system is to seek truth and to serve all the people of this state. And I'll offer a few words about unity and truth. On truth, I've never seen a time when more people believe conflicting ideas that cannot be simultaneously true. There is tremendous confusion and frustration among the public about what is true and what is not. There's also confusion even about what truth is and how we can come to know it. And we have known for many years that the social media algorithms have, true to their design, fed and reinforced the conflicting ideas people hold to be true. Imagine how this plays out with the rapid development and deployment of AI. I never really felt that comfortable with the term virtual reality. It's always troubled me, and I fear that AI-fueled virtual reality is going to drive us further in the chaotic direction we are already heading. So allow me to give you a few parting exhortations. To my fellow Regents, the rap on Regents is that we are a ceremonial body peopled by fading semi-dignitaries. You are not merely ceremonial. You must insist UW live its critical function to seek truth and build unity. You can and you must be both critical and supportive. To the faculty and the staff of our universities, thank you for your passion about your disciplines and your affection for our students. I've traveled each of your campuses multiple times, and I've seen your work in the light of our students' eyes and in the light of my own children's eyes. You do change lives. I am truly sorry that you remain chronically underpaid, and I'm sorry that we've been so ineffective in changing that. I will keep trying. To UW-Madison, you are the global powerhouse you purport to be, but there's a lot you can do better. The rap on Madison is that it's a lovable, loony, lefty place. I think you should own the reality that your culture is stiflingly leftist. Take your critics seriously. You're tough enough to do that. And even when our critics are off the mark, we can still find value in listening. We don't need a conservative safe space at Madison. We need the culture across the campus to be genuinely open, tolerant, and self-reflective. Your intellectual excellence should not be an occasion for arrogance, for I have yet to be convinced of a positive correlation between intelligence and virtue. Don't get me wrong, I don't celebrate ignorance, but I know many uncredentialed people of great wisdom and virtue. Brains are table stakes at Madison, but in the path ahead, your heart matters more than your brain. For you need to lead this state back to a place of mutual respect and affection. Don't cling to your past, but help us face our demons by facing your own. And you must do this with the full strength of intelligence tempered by humility. Let your heart for the people be the hallmark of your bearing. You cannot effectively serve the whole state if your culture effectively despises half the people. What good is it if you love those who love you? To the comprehensives, don't try to be Madison. You have distinct and important missions, and your challenges and opportunities are far different from those of Madison. You do amazing work that is rooted in the intimate connection to those you serve. You too must do better in the pursuit of truth and unity. To UW System Administration, I've enjoyed my time with nearly all of you. Okay, with all of you. Large bureaucracies have organizational dynamics that reflexively avoid change. I know this, I'm a Catholic. And I've seen more change in, more positive change in the last several years than in the first 5. So I've made it almost to the end without mentioning my still unanswered questions about our COVID period. I understand that chaos reigned in 2020, but by early and mid-2021, there was much that was known that you refused to consider and adapt to. Specifically, my questions about mortality and morbidity on our campuses were very pertinent and remain unanswered. There was much light in our testing data that we could have and still could learn from. And frankly, the implementation of a vaccine mandate on our employees in the fall of 2021 was manifestly unjust, unnecessary, and unscientific. My question about how many staff were fired or who quit rather than take a vaccine against their will remains unanswered. Above all, what have we learned that can shape our future response to these type of conditions? The answer must not be nothing. When your governing board members ask you questions you find difficult, stonewalling is unacceptable. And to be clear, I was stonewalled on that and other issues. To the legislature, I have asked Regent leadership to invite legislative leadership into the Regents meeting for an honest give and take on a number of occasions. To my knowledge, it hasn't happened. And I've heard multiple times that it's a good idea and it should be done. And I'm kind of familiar with the response that, that's an interesting idea, Bob, let me follow up on that. So where's the follow-up? To Speaker Voss, if you were invited, please come. I understand the impulse to deny funding until the UW addresses issues your caucus is concerned about. Be direct and be temperate. Listen to the responses and don't put up with stonewalling. There was a very difficult budget compromise reached in late 2023. Have the agreed upon measures been implemented or not? In the meantime, please pay our faculty and staff for the important work they do. They've lost a lot of purchasing power since the dawn of COVID, and they weren't overpaid before. Pointless turnover is inefficient, and just wages withheld from workers is one of the sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. To the governor, I didn't vote for you, but I respect you as our governor, as my governor. I also have to admit that I kind of like you. Please lead. The UW is not your university system. It belongs to all of us. Legislative budget authority and the advice and consent of the Senate are not constitutional aberrations left by ignorant forebears. They contemplated a divided government, and these measures are meant to induce genuine communication between non-aligned parties. I've heard many times about how our state functioned in the past with divided government. As I understand it, people played cards, drank beer together, argued, and came to difficult compromises. You can skip the cards and the drinking if you want, but you don't have to. For the love of the state, the university, and the God most of us believe in, get together and communicate. For peace does not consist of the absence of conflict, rather tranquility and order. And there are too many people and too much money, most of it from outside of the state, seeking to reinforce divisions in Wisconsin. Governor, please be a unifier. Thank you all for your time and attention. I have achieved semi-retirement, so please reach out to keep our relationships alive. Thank you. Another one, I got two of them. Tim said he was the only no vote.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Regent Emeritus Atwell. And now I'd like to call on Regent Zalzwiedel to present the board's resolution for thanking the UW-Madison for this incredible meeting.
Thank you. I have a resolution of appreciation for my buddy school, UW-Madison. Whereas the members of the Board of Regents are pleased to recognize the University of Wisconsin-Madison as the official host campus for the board's February 2025 meeting, and are grateful for the generous hospitality extended this month by Chancellor Mnuchin and the entire Badger community. Whereas the board appreciated hearing Chancellor Mnuchin's thought-provoking presentation about growing UW-Madison's future, and whereas the Business and Finance Committee heard from Vice Chancellor Rob Kramer and Associate Vice Chancellor David Murphy about setting a strong financial foundation for UW-Madison and addressing challenges through innovation and continuous improvement, and whereas the Capital Planning and Budget Committee gained a deeper understanding of how UW-Madison is building for the future, and whereas the Education Committee heard a timely presentation about artificial intelligence titled Shaping Tomorrow, Student Insights on AI's Impact, and whereas the board was pleased to present a Regent Partnership Award to UW-Madison and American Family Insurance, recognizing their decades-long partnership based on innovation and collaboration. And whereas the board was inspired by a panel discussion on empowering innovation and entrepreneurial excellence about UW-Madison's efforts to strengthen entrepreneurial pathways, experiences, and outcomes, drawing on the findings of a study commissioned by Chancellor Mnuchin. And whereas the board was delighted to hear from UW-Madison student Shantanu Chaudhuri, a computer engineering and computer science major, and whereas the board appreciated the opportunity to tour the new Computer Data and Information Sciences building currently under construction, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents hereby thank UW-Madison for this month's informative presentations, its forward-thinking spirit, and its many continued contributions to the universities of Wisconsin and the entire state. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everyone, and thank you again to our incredible host, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and for the delicious food. It was wonderful. And before we end our session, do any regents or anybody have any announcements, memorials, anything they'd like to share? Or we just want to get out of here? All right. Everyone drive safe. Thank you so much to all the campuses for being here. Appreciate it. Take care. We're adjourned.